Okay. All right. So, seeing a quorum, we call meeting to order. Let's see. Sorry. That's consent. October 3rd. Getting ahead of October here. 2018. So first order of business, public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled. So, do we have any public comment? Okay, seeing none. Close public comment. And to item B, approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission, September 19th, 2018. All right. So we have a first and a second. Under discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Commissioner Mahan?
On page 6, in the motion, the first item in the motion where it says handrails will go around corners, I don't think that's quite clear enough. I think it should say handrails at stairwell walls should go around corners.
Okay.
And then on page 7, down on the motion item 4, it says study relocating the fence at the Victoria Street exit of the parking lot, and I think. No.
Then they can hear you.
We'll just
Okay,
yellow.
I'm going to do this again.
All right, there we go.
The item 4 on page 7. Study relocating the fence at the Victoria Street exit of the parking lot, and add in there to narrow the driveway, and then follow to allow for, and then add additional landscaping.
Good.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner House.
perhaps I overlooked it, but on the cover sheet, should it not have the
Which page?
cover sheet of the minute, should it not have the attorney that was attending from the city attorney's office, either under staff or somewhere? He's mentioned in one of the, I don't remember her name, I'm sorry, is it Ostringer?
Have Ostringer?
Yeah.
Are attorneys people too?
Not today.
We can count them.
Yeah. Anyway, it seems to me it should be shown that she was in attendance because she was here the whole meeting.
Is
And-
that under staff?
Well, a good bit of the meeting.
Well, we could add when she was and when she wasn't, or when she was.
Yeah.
Is that typical?
Commissioner Grumbine, Ms. Ostringer was here from the start of the meeting till the end of 800 Santa Barbara, so I think we can show
Okay.
that time frame.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on page 6, item 3 in the motion, number 2 in the motion, should say angle of the balcony bracket will be changed slightly to be more vertical.
Yes.
Surprised Commissioner
Yeah.
Mahan did not speak to that. That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On that same page, on 6, under staff comments, Ms. Ostringer added that the commission has granted project design approval. This was a contentious hearing. I think it should state, Ms. Ostringer added that the commission had previously granted project design approval by majority vote.
Commissioner Drury, it wasn't a unanimous vote for project
No.
design approval.
It was unanimous?
It wasn't.
Not.
It wasn't unanimous, though. It was just a
So I
majority.
said majority vote, right? Is that correct?
It was a majority vote.
Yeah, okay. That's
just
what-
making
yeah,
it clear.
that's fine. So I'd like it, if possible, I'd like it to read, Ms. Ostringer added that the commission had previously granted project design approval by majority vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Call the question.
Any other comments on the minutes? All right. So, do we have a motion to
You do.
ratify? Do we do the with the approve
have a
with the
second.
additional comments?
Yes.
Okay. And the seconder?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right. With one abstention, Commissioner Benya. All right. So now we're on to consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All items were reviewed by Commissioner Mahan. Item A, 1118 East Cabrillo Boulevard received approval of review after final. Item B, 2014 Garden Street was continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer with positive comments. Item C, 227 East Arriaga received approval of review after final. Item D, 212 West Cabrillo Boulevard received project design approval and final approval. Item E, 1500 State Street received approval of review after final. And item F, 516 State Street received approval of review after final.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, and a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of...
Can we do it under discussion?
Oh, sorry, under discussion.
Just under item A, if it could read, the Cabrillo Pavilion and Stoa are structures of merit, plural. First line of under 1118.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay, Mr. Vania is abstaining. Okay, and now we are on to announcements.
Mr. Chair, I have an announcement.
All right, Commissioner Mann?
The restoration of the courthouse mural room by the Courthouse Legacy Foundation received the Governor's Award for the best restoration project in the state of California for this year.
Nice.
And I will,
Goodness.
as past president, I will be going up on the 31st to receive that award, so I will not be at the 31st meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission, or will I be able to do consent calendar on that day?
Okay,
Our thoughts will be with you.
yeah.
That's
Halloween,
terrific.
too. I was looking forward
Halloween.
to you dressing
Well,
up.
I'm
Are you going to
gonna-
go in costume?
I'm wearing my Batman costume.
Oh, very good.
Your Juan Cabrillo costume.
There we go. Okay, any other announcements?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have an announcement regarding upcoming applications for the HLC. Resignations need to be received by the clerk's office no later than 5:30 on this Thursday, October 4th, in order for the position to be included in this next recruitment process. The application deadline for new HLC members is Tuesday, October 16th at 5 p.m. Interviews by City Council will occur on Tuesday, October 30th at 4 p.m., Tuesday, November 13th at 4 p.m., and Tuesday, November 20th at 6 p.m. Official appointments will occur on December 11th of this year.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Arias.
I have a question that I would like to ask regarding two items.
Okay.
On the 20th of September, the city attorney indicated that he was going to be working on the historic ordinance, and I think we would like to have an update of anything that happened in that meeting and how it's progressing. The second request I have is I would like to ask, I was under the impression that the new city attorney who is representing various boards and commissions and land use would be coming to the various boards to discuss findings or things like this. And I was wondering if there is one scheduled for landmarks. And if there is, there are a couple of questions I would like to ask her. So perhaps staff could find out if she is planning on attending.
Commissioner Arias, we are in the works of setting up a discussion to go over general findings and procedures. We don't have a set date yet, but if you do have questions that you would like to be
Yes.
included in that discussion, I would advise you to forward them to me or the urban
Okay, I'll
historian.
forward them to you. And also, I would like to have, as I say, a status report on the historic ordinance status, which there was a meeting on the 20th. It's very important to us.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Arias. Any other announcements? So I'm going to be stepping down from item 2 for that's my firm's project, and that's it. And then as well, I wanted to say that I was there's a committee or group that the city has assembled for looking at the State Street redevelopment issues, and I've been part of that, asked to be part of that as Mr. Lavoie couldn't make it. So And that is every couple of weeks they meet. So they had the first meeting last week. So, any subcommittee reports?
Commissioner House, do you want to say anything?
Regarding the fonts?
Yes.
Only that we finally agreed to meet.
Yes.
What font was it in?
Well, we're shooting for, was it Monday?
Monday morning, yes.
Yeah.
All right.
With Allison.
We haven't
Levy.
heard back from the city's graphic designer yet.
Gotcha. Okay. If there's no other subcommittee reports, move on to item F.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Chris Manson-Hing with the AIASB. I'd like to announce coming this Saturday, October the 6th, from 10 a.m. in the morning to after 5 or 6, the Architect Tours 2018. It's the biggest Architect Tours we have ever had, with 12 projects all in the heart of downtown. We have a mix of residential, multifamily, single-family residential, multifamily residential, work and live units. We have a theater that has just got historical landmark status. So it's a very wide-ranging architect tours. One of the exciting things about it is this year, where everyone checks in at their first point, they can get a token that would allow them to ride free and any amount of time that you want on MTD and the shuttle. So you'll be able to move about the downtown area as easily as you would like. We have 12 projects. I'd like to just put
Could you just clarify one thing real quick?
this little map up there that will come with the booklet that you would have that shows where all the projects are, and it has a list of all the projects there on it. Jeff Shelton was, good enough to produce that map for us. I think it's going to be a really great tour. We've already sold more tickets at this stage of an architect tours than we've ever had, and we probably will break the record this time.
Great. Mr. Vineyard, did you have a question?
The only question was that this shuttle will take you to any and all of these places periodically, or what?
No, the shuttle is the State Street shuttle,
Yes.
and the MTD runs its regular routes. All they're offering to do is anyone who is on the tour is going to be allowed to get on and off of those
Thank you.
at any time, with your
Actually,
token.
could you hand that back real fast? I want the map, because so it kind of makes sense that, so here's the State Street.
State Street right off of the wharf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, the projects are a compilation of
So you can
being off of,
zigzag.
Yeah.
being off of State Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's leave it up there just for a little minute, if you're not through with your presentation.
There's some of the very interesting projects we have. A penthouse on the Granada Theater. We have a single family residence that is actually built on top of a garage for classic cars. We have the theater. We have the Impact Hub in town. The live work area on Lower Anacapa of an architectural office. And of course Jeff Shelton's El Zapato, which actually has 4 units in it, interestingly enough. So I think it's going to be a really exciting tour, and I hope everybody, this Saturday, October the 6th, tickets are easy to buy. You can go, everything that I've told you is on our website, aiasb.com. Go straight to here, press on the architect tours. You get to this area, there's an advanced press release. That's it there, and you can press on tickets, how to get to. All here can be done over your phone, on the internet, and then you can pick up your tokens at the very first site that you visit, and you can start on any site and pick up your tokens.
I'm not sure if that actually got caught on the screen or not. But.
Yeah, not sure why I did.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think it's just
So I'll just run through here. There's the website. You can-
actually it's still not
Okay.
tracking. Hold on. See if it can.
It's on here, yeah.
Oh, let's see if we can.
Well, Okay.
On the web, AIA
So on the
website.
website, aiasb.com, and it's all there for you.
Okay, perfect.
So, yeah.
All right.
Thanks very much.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
How much are the tickets?
So here under tickets, let's see here. So general members $80, AIA members $70, students $25.
Great. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Okay. Any other questions about this item? Okay. Great. All right. Then we're on to discussion item number 1, the 5-year plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So we've come up upon the end of 5 years of the last 5-year plan of the historic resources element of the general plan, which was approved by this commission as well as the council when they adopted the historic resources element, which was adopted in 2011, the 5-year plan in 2012. As you may know, I met with a subcommittee of HLC members to review the next 5-year plan in the spring, and we are now here in front of the commission to present the 5-year plan. We are going to just go over some of the major accomplishments of the past 5 years, specific items for the next 5 years, and those that are just ongoing. Lots of the work in the plan is work we do here at the commission. And there's a table that was attached to your packet of each of the 47 historic resource element items and how they are addressed. And so I will begin with just some highlights of the last 5 years, some of the major efforts. One of the biggest was the Historic Resource Design Guidelines. We did have a guidelines subcommittee that we worked on these design guidelines with, as well as with the illustrated design work of Commissioners Mahan and Grumbine to draft these guidelines. They are intended to guide applicants and the commission in appropriate additions and alterations for historic structures. They do correspond to the Secretary of Interior standards. They were adopted by the Landmarks Commission in November 2014 and were pending City Council approval. The intention was that they would go to City Council along with the revised ordinance, which has been on hold due to so many ordinances mandated by the state and is now moving forward. So we hope they will go in concurrence with the new ordinance. If that is on hold again, we will move them forward independently. We have also accomplished flagging new parcels near resources. Not only in our MAPS program do we now have every structure of merit and landmark and potential historic resource color-coded, the structures of merit and the landmarks have a buffer around them to notify any property within 50 to 100 feet that they are near a landmark or structure of merit. And in addition, we have in our permitting program a warning that comes up if you're near a historic resource. It's called the Historic Sensitivity Area. It's adjacent to things on the potentials list, 50 feet around structures of merit and 100 feet around nationally recognized buildings. We also have completed the online database, which you can go online and type in an address, an architect, a style, and have the information we have in the online database. All landmarks, all structures of merit are in there. All buildings that were surveyed in the Lower Riviera survey, as well as the West Side survey, are in there. And we're doing the potentials list as we update you with the mass designations. So we have about 300 to 500 of the potentials list in there. And you can also generate a DPR form from the information in there. So those are the state form with all the information. So it can be in a more lay person's format as well as the state format, which is a little more academic. And this is what comes up when you click on an individual property. We've also attached all the 1978 survey forms to the bottom, so you can see what was originally surveyed and how it was updated, as well as any historic structures reports associated with properties. So as we move into the next 5 years, one of the items in the HRE is item 10.6 was to become a certified local government. This is a national program with the National Park Services, and it's run through the State Historic Preservation Office. This is not intended as another layer of control, but a partnership with the state and the local governments. They provide a lot of training for commissioners, as well as credibility to our program, because we will be considered consistent with the national and state regulations, and it'll insulate our program from charges of being arbitrary and capricious, as well as provide prestige and cachet. And we could also be eligible for grants. For example, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Riverside all received $40,000 each last year to help in survey work. And we are already meeting the standards of the certified local government without receiving any benefits of the program. So that is one of the goals of the next 5 years. This is to help answer Commissioner Arias's question about the revised historic resource ordinance. As you all know, the design review supervisor, Imad Sweta, and I met with Scott Vincent for an entire day in a closed room, going through all the necessary things to revise our ordinance. He has been assigned by George Buell and Renee that this is a top priority for the rest of the year. And we hope to, we got through all the issues, and now he is drafting a draft for us. The current ordinance is one chapter. It's to be divided into 4 that have clear divisions. One would be just designation and preservation procedures of individual resources, then historic district procedures and criteria, post-disaster protection, and then specific items just addressing the Commission's powers and procedures. We clarified many details in the ordinance that just need clear clarifications. So the next steps would be, once he's done with the draft, we would present it to the ad hoc subcommittee and they can send in the comments. Then we would present the draft to the new council ordinance committee for review and comments. Then it would come to the Historic Landmarks Commission for comments and posted for public comment. And then finally to City Council for adoption. We do not have a date when the draft will be submitted to staff at this time. The next item for the next 5 years would be, once we have that new ordinance that clearly states the criteria and procedures outlined for historic district adoption, which we do not have in our current ordinance, we will start to designate one by one the historic districts. We have 6 that have been found and recommended by professional consultants that were paid by the city to survey historic areas of the city and make recommendations. So we have these 6 that are pending. In 2013 and 2014, the Historic Landmarks Commission voted to add, as an appendices to the potentials list, all the contributing buildings of the potential districts to sort of protect the districts until they can be fully designated. But that does not include a full designation for protection. Ongoing items, in addition to you all working on compatibility of new development and additions and alterations to resources. As you know, we continue to promote and process the Mills Act contracts, as well as provide guidance with the California Historic Building Code. Lots of my work is encouraging the reuse of original windows, which is not to the current code, as well as providing technical assistance during the restoration process. You know, we worked with the restoration of the corbels at the Santa Barbara Library, the ceiling at the Masonic Temple. I'm usually on site to make sure a lot of those do meet the Secretary and Chair standards after you grant your final approval. And as you know, we continue to designate resources, landmarks and structures of merit, and then as we go, and then we have the future items that are not funded at this time, but are still hoped to be accomplished by 2030. And we are looking for you for any suggestions on the next 5-year Historic Resources Work Program as we move it towards council and to meet the general plan. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's bring it back to the commission for questions.
Public comment?
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Oh, open, yeah, very subtly, yeah. Open public comment. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Now back to the commission for questions.
Mr.
Question?
Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Green?
On page 6, under HR 7.2, protect landscapes that contribute to historic resources context. How soon could we implement such a thing? Because that's really critical.
Well, we already do it continually when we require development review with the commissioner with the landscape.
Does it need to be formally done, or like?
I have it
the
under
one-
ongoing item.
Oh, okay.
We have a landscape architect on that we consult with when we have any landscapes that come forward.
Okay, and the other question is, how do we, or can we accelerate the designation for certified local government?
That would just be once we get the 5-year plan through council. We are hoping at the same time they have to pass a resolution to do so, and the mayor signs it. And I don't see any conflict with that, so I think that can go through very quickly. It's just a technical thing that we have to move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, so I guess there's no motion or anything to be made, so but thank you for the presentation. Nicole?
You could have comments.
Oh, yeah, comments. All right, sorry. I guess we go to comments.
I think it's wonderful that we have somebody like Nicole to follow up on all of this and keep it all on the straight and narrow.
Yep.
Yeah,
Two.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Arias?
I see that Mrs. White is present, and I'd like to alert you that I dropped a newspaper article off at the desk, which as of January 1st, it was signed by Mr. Brown, our governor, about restaurants in single-family zones, cooking facilities. I would suggest you get a hold of it. Your limit is something like 30 meals a week or something, but it eliminates single-family residential zones again. And you weren't present, and I dropped it off, but I want you to get a copy of it and be aware of it, because it really affects the residential neighborhoods in the city.
I just wanted to thank you for that. Was it at the front desk that you dropped it off? So I will retrieve a copy for myself, and thank you.
It's a signed bill.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Another fun one in the pipe. All right. Anyone else? Comments? Okay. So in that case, we'll close that item, and I need to step down for the next one. So, Commissioner Mahan.
Sure, I'll take it. Okay, item number 2 is a concept review. This is a new project, 2010 Garden Street. This is a Mission Revival style residence constructed in 1894. The Crocker Row House Number 1 is on the city's list of potential historic resources as it is eligible for designation as a structure of merit. Proposal for a new detached 2-car garage and approximately 68 square feet of associated hardscape. Staff hearing officer review is required for the garage structure to be located in a required 30-foot front setback. So this will be a concept review, comments only. Project requires staff hearing officer approval of the garage to be located in the front yard. You people would give your name for the record, please.
Barbara Lowenthal, Harrison Design, agent for the owners. Serena McClintock, Harrison Design.
And just swing that around and be closer to you.
And then-
Do we have some staff comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just reiterating what's already indicated in the project description, this parcel, as you'll see as the applicants go through their proposal, is a corner lot, and it's subject to 2 front setbacks, a pretty substantial 30-foot front setback on both sides. The proposal is to have the garage located in the secondary front setback, which is why it has to receive comments from this board as to why it's aesthetically appropriate to have it in that location, so that can be forwarded to the staff hearing officer. So just when you're reviewing the project today, please consider why it's aesthetically appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, why don't you give us a presentation of what you're proposing? This is on the corner of Mission and Garden Street.
Correct. This is Crocker Row number 1. As you may remember, most of the Crocker Row homes originally had their garages on the back alleyway. This home, however, is precluded from doing that because of changes in the area, and there is no longer an alleyway, and they butt right up against their backdoor neighbor. Okay. So the only spot that we could find to place the garage was actually to stay within the existing driveway. We're only removing a small portion of the driveway to allow for the turn radius to back up and go out head first in the driveway. And it's a bit lower. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's that part, you can see it in the lower left photograph, sits down lower from the house. So the thought being that that would have less of an impact. Oh, thank you. Right.
We
correct.
have a
Right
pointer
there.
here somewhere. Where's our pointer?
Commissioner Mahan, she has
Right
the
here.
pointer. You just need to extend it.
Ah.
There you go.
There you go. We had the pointer.
Just don't hit.
So the idea being that it would be in this lower area here. You can see it maybe a little bit better right here, Bill. The driveway actually goes down a bit to a wall and a storage
Is that the
area.
dog?
The dog is actually right out here somewhere.
That looks like, no, that's a palm.
No, the dog's in the middle. You can't.
It's okay.
He's covered by the palm tree in this
Okay.
photo. The dog remains. He goes with the house. This is our streetscape.
I think we just looked at this house here.
Yes, that's our Crocker Row number 2 project that you have seen. So here you can see that we were able to get the 2-car garage within the area, only removing vegetation right here to add the required hardscape for the turning radius. One pittosporum plant will be removed. Other than that, all the landscaping remains.
Pittosporum?
And then these are our elevations. The attempt was to retain the idea of the massing of the house and some of the window details, as you see here, which are the Crocker Row detail windows, but not to try and make this some grand garage that might go with the house, but rather minimize its intrusion into the property. There will not be any extra curb cuts. We're retaining the historic curb cuts, matching the materials on the house, including the 2-piece clay tile roof.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to open up public comment. Is there anyone here to comment on this particular project? Seeing no one coming forward, I'll close public comment, and it is to the commission for questions. Mr. Drury?
Yes, you're going to increase the hardscape. I think you
That one little part, correct.
Let's go back to that. It's right here.
Right. That hatch that you see there, the darker hatch, that's the only spot that's being increased.
Looks like about 30 square feet.
Sorry. Can you see it here?
Yeah, I can.
Right there, just that, kind of that little darker hatch piece.
I guess my other
Right
question
there.
then is, was there ever a garage historically?
Most likely there was a garage in the back,
Where the pool is now?
probably back here farther, because most of the ones where, for instance, 2024 has a barn, and it sits about, if you follow this line back here, it sits about back right there. 2050, we were able to add the garage only because we bought the property behind it and put the garage back closer to where it was. That's just not possible here. And this property also has a kind of a crazy angle on it. But yes, they would have had one. That's
Mr.
not our client, though, who did the pool.
Mr. Chair,
No. Thank you.
in response to that, I served on the Planning Commission when this project came before the Planning Commission on a matter, and there was a garage.
Well, the project back then, not.
That's what I said when I served on the Planning Commission. This project came in front of the Planning Commission, and there was a garage.
Right, no longer existing.
Mr. House, any questions?
Yeah, the ones that come to mind so far would be, why is the garage 25 feet long, exceeding the minimum that the city requires for a garage, plus the bump out on the back?
Well, I think that the reason was it's somewhat mimicking what we did for 2010, 2014 garden, excuse me, and trying to keep the pitch of the roof to be more in keeping with the pitch of the house, which was one of the reasons for our designs on 2014. We had a hard time making the roof look like it worked with the house.
Instead of being pyramidal, having a little
Yeah.
bit of a ridge. Did you explore, or would it even be possible to depress the garage even further and have a flat roof on it so it looks more like it's part of that base of the residence?
I would have to ask the architect who worked on the project about that. I know that the thinking was that trying to stay in rhythm with the rest of the neighborhood was part of the reason for using the same materials, using the same type of massing, and placing it at least a little bit lower. Furthermore, if you look at the side of the project, if you look at if you can see
south
some of the
elevation?
side photos, no, the one where the garage is actually adjacent to the house.
On the plans here,
Let's
so
turn over there.
the folks at home.
It's one of the sides of the house. You can see here that where it actually has been changed. And so the idea being that if we could just get in front of that just a little to where you couldn't see it, then it would look more like the original historic structure. I don't know if you can notice the columns are kind of, well, I'm not sure if the photo shows it, but the columns don't exactly line up
No.
where they should be when they got added on that side. So it was also an effort to kind of shade that, keep that from view, if you will. It's not one of the better facades of the house.
Commissioner Arias?
Question. This house was recently for sale,
Correct, and our clients purchased it.
and it is a purchased
Yes.
house, and has escrow closed?
Pardon me?
Has escrow closed?
Yes, it has.
Okay. All right, that was my question.
Commissioner Vena?
No question.
Commissioner Lendick?
No question.
How about comments?
I can come.
I can.
We hope you can comment.
Mind?
I can comment. Watch me the one that works.
They always give you one that doesn't work. They're picking on you.
Do it on purpose.
Oh, hello. Yes, I can. I can come. Is it working now? Yes, I can comment. I think this is a highly inappropriate addition.
Highly inappropriate?
Highly inappropriate. It will destroy the appearance of that house from that corner in no uncertain terms.
and it will be a change forever. I would hate to see it happen. And I believe there is a place on the rear of the property to put a garage and ask for the same encroachment. Now, it may not be as convenient at the rear of the property, but I believe that this house demands something other than convenience for cars. Any.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
No comments at this time.
Commissioner Elias?
Thank you. Oh, okay. I have to make sure. I've got a bad cold, and if I coughed, I'd make all you deaf. This is a very special. This is a very special house, and the design, as I see it now, detracts, and I'm not happy with it at all. Mr. I think of your name.
Howes.
Thank you. Mr. Howes' idea about dropping it down, making it as invisible as possible, is something that I think you should look into. Also, I agree, looking for another site on the property for the garage would be a good idea. I don't know under what circumstances the accessibility to the previous existing garage was reduced, whether it was a legal option or what went on, but it's probably gone through the status of limitations. But as it is currently designed, I would not recommend it. I think it would it would not be appropriate for this, which I consider not only historic buildings, but actually landmarks.
Commissioner House?
I would have to agree with the comments made. I mean, when I first took a look at it, I thought that just really adversely affects the setting of this historic resource. And, you know, I understand it's difficult to find an appropriate place to put this, but this is not it to me. And I think that the only option I can see to keep it in that location, which, you know, makes sense from the standpoint of the layout of the whole parcel, is to depress it, give it a flat roof, and make it look like it's part of the base of the building. But I just can't support it as it's proposed.
Commissioner Drury?
Yes. I would agree with the previous comments. I think that the building, from Mission Street, if you walk up the street, the architecture would be obscured because you're looking up already. And then what you would see is the garage. Am I not hooked up? Oh, is that better? I would agree with the comments already said, and I think that if this has any chance of success, I think it needs to be pushed back as far as possible. And I would utilize that rectangular. I think you said it was an addition with that, it has that sort of a studio window, an old addition past the porticos.
On the house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would think that the most minimal design possible, pushed back as far as possible. I would like to see something like that. I can't support it as it's presented.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Vena?
I did look at the plans, and I hadn't prior to that, but I concur with what's been said, and perhaps at the rear of the property might make more sense. Obviously, there's not much room on the property to do too much more than this. But
Is he not hooked up? Oh, your mic?
Click on.
well, it says it's on, but I'll raise my voice. Anyway, I concur with what's been said. In addition to that, like I said, in addition to that, as I said, it doesn't seem to make sense putting it in this zone.
Mr. Chair, could I shed some light on the ability to put anything right here in the rear of the property?
Yes,
There's
you
a
may.
significant drop in the land at this point. There is no curb cut along Mission Street, and it's just not a feasible spot. It would have been a great spot to do it, but if you get out there and look at the difference in the topography, you would see that that's the space you could maybe get a half of a garage, a one-car garage, but you would definitely be mucking with historic sandstone walls and other parts. Part of the reason for putting it on the L of the driveway. But we will certainly take your comments under consideration about reducing it.
Yeah,
architecture.
I think that what you're hearing is that the board is unanimously opposed to the project as submitted.
Okay.
And so it's, you know, the old saying, it's back to the drawing board.
Right.
And perhaps a flat-roofed something, it might even attach, it might even...
There's there's a wall and it's not, there's some utility here that we can't go beyond this point. So we...
Well, there's lots of restrictions, and it's a truncated site, and you have a very, very difficult design problem.
Yep, we do.
On your desk. So I'm going to, with those comments, we can just continue this?
So, Commissioner Mahan, since the board hasn't indicated any positive comments, I would suggest doing an indefinite continuance on this item.
Indefinite, I want a motion for an indefinite continuance with the comments that the board unanimously rejects the application as submitted.
Second.
So it's been moved by House and seconded by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So ordered.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. It's a tough project. Don't castigate yourself. Okay, I don't see is our chair coming forward here?
And
No,
Chair Mahan, we need to take a short break. We can only start 15 minutes ahead of the next item.
We're 15 minutes ahead?
We have to wait until 15 minutes ahead of the item. We're not quite there yet. The next item starts at 2:40, so we can't start for another couple minutes.
Can we go downtown and have a couple of drinks?
Anyway, what did I do?
There ought to be a service to deliver.
Mute.
Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break.
required for a coastal development permit. And if you would introduce yourself and state your name for the record.
Justin Van Mullen with Parks and Recreation.
My name is Ing Yu Hong. I'm the landscape architect.
And Chris Bradbury with R&T Architects.
Oh, do we have that one? There we go. Perfect. Okay. Oh, could you?
My name is Ing Yu Hong, landscape architect with SWA.
And Chris Bradbury with R&T Architects.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick comment, staff comment for you all. Just so you know, this is a landmark and on the National Register. However, when they this part of the property was installed in 1977, and when the Landmarks Commission did designate this property, they did discuss the wading pool, and they decided that the pool is the area is part of the designation for design review, but the pool itself is not historic because it was built in 1977, and they felt that they wanted the recreation department to have flexibility proposing new designs within the area subject to the commission's review and findings.
Okay. All right. So if you would
Let me
show us
just
the project.
start off with a quick introduction.
Yep.
So our site is the West Beach wading pool. It's existing. It's
Oh, sorry. Let me just center this. Yeah.
So West Beach wading pool, it's existing. It's directly to the east from Los Baños Pool, which is located here. It's surrounded by a very commercial parking lot that's used by the harbor with boats and trailers. As was mentioned, it also has a historic setting with the Los Baños Pool building. Our main goal is to maximize the community use of this land, while also respecting the commercial use of the harbor and also the historic site. We want to reimagine this area. It's the existing wading pool, playground, and picnic area that are all within this space. Hasn't been in use for about, the pool hasn't been in use for about 4 years. For one, it was a response to the drought, but also we have a leak that is going to take quite a bit of destructive testing to determine where that leak is located. We also have new laws requiring a sloped walkway into the pool for accessibility and a new infiltration system. So this gives us a chance to really reimagine this site. The wading pool, when it was open just June, July, and August, the hotter months. And what we're looking at is replacing it with a splash pad or spray grounds. This is something the community has requested for a number of years. Every time someone comes back from a different city, comes back to Santa Barbara and says, this is something that our community needs. So a splash playground, unlike a wading pool, it doesn't have any standing water, doesn't require a lifeguard. And so therefore, we don't need to schedule its opening and closing with respect to having it staffed. That gives us the ability to not only keep it open during the summer months, but also if we have hot spells that we've been having quite a bit, we can open up the water portion of that. But when the water is off, it's still a playground. The whole space is still a playground all year round. Now, this is just an example that I'm showing. We have looked at a bunch of different types of splash pads and did an outreach, a community workshop on May 24th of this year. We had 13 different people participate in that workshop, including local businesses. And then we took our input from that workshop to our Parks and Recreation Commission. They gave us a little bit more input, and now here we are with that information in front of this board today. Now, there's one thing that I want to point out. It's a little different. This is a playground. It's a little different than what you look at on a regular basis. And playgrounds change over time. They're not permanent. And I'll give you an example. This was one of the playgrounds that was put on East Beach next to the Cabrillo Pavilion, and it didn't last that long. Codes change, safety changes, and I'm sure that things will change over time, but we will have a building that will be much more permanent, and fencing and surrounds. So what we're here today to look at is we're in our master planning stage, and we still have a DART review to go through. We have issues like the protecting the black-crowned night heron that Ingyu will talk a little bit more about, that are nesting in the ficus trees and creating barriers for that. So through this process, we would like to get a little bit more of a preliminary feedback from this board before we start the environmental review. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm going to continue present.
Yeah.
So I will be presenting this project to the commission. The first page is just a cover page showing the site boundary, the project area that's located within Santa Barbara Harbor. Our site is right at this corner, across from Pershing Park, as well as Los Baños Del Mar pool right here. So if we move on to the next sheet here. And so, as landscape architects, we tend to draw our design inspirations from nature and from this existing site. And so looking at the Santa Barbara Harbor, as well as the entire waterfront, there were three very interesting, important factors that really helped to inspire us as we started shaping the identity of this project. So the first and foremost, as landscape architects, we've always kind of looked at nature as a key factor. So the site being located right along this beautiful Pacific Ocean that has these bluffs and sand dunes. So these kind of native habitat begins to play a role in the design as during the creation process. And as you move deeper into the ocean, we know this area is very, very wealthy and rich in terms of its marine life. And part of that is supported by this giant kelp forest. So again, the marine life and the riches of the species in the water is an important idea to convey in our design. So with all this marine life, it feeds into the fish. There's a huge diversity of fish community here in this Santa Barbara Harbor. And as a result of that, as we can see, there has been decades of commercial fishing in this area, and it's basically the way we see it, it's this kind of anchor stone or the identity of this harbor, that it's not just for tourism and recreation, but it has some sort of authenticity that it really talks about life underwater and living off the resources and riches of the ocean. So that was something that was very important for us to think about. And then aside from the water and nature, there is this kind of day-to-day events that occur within the harbor, and most notably is this tourist recreational aspect. And a lot of that could be deciphered through some of these lifeguard towers that's along the entire beachfront. And then there is also this harbor patrol boat that is very unique to Santa Barbara, and that it serves to provide security and monitoring activities within this harbor. So and then there's the buoy that eventually becomes this perching ground for the sea lion and the seagulls. So all these little ingredients start to inform us as to what are the big ideas for this project, and then taking the site into context, and making sure this design is grounded in terms of its history and the resources that are there. So as we delve deeper into the site itself, as Justin had mentioned earlier, the site is located along Cabrillo Boulevard, and right next to it is Los Baños del Mar pool. There's currently a kind of paseo that connects Pershing Park and takes people all the way out to the parking area and to the marina beyond. So this is an important access route getting into the park. There's also a grove of trees where the black-knight crown heron currently reside, and so we need to address the important and very kind of interesting, unique aspect of this site. There is also an existing playground, and as mentioned earlier, this playground was constructed much earlier on, and apparently hasn't been very well used, and we're thinking that perhaps it's because of the fencing that's really kind of isolating the playground from everything else. And if we were to renovate this wading pool, there is a great opportunity to integrate the playground, the dry play area, with the wet area, so that this entire project becomes a cohesive whole. So that's a goal that we want to try to achieve during the design process. There's also existing picnic areas. Again, it's used sporadically, but we think this site ought to be leveraged in the sense of, optimizing its use for recreational purposes and for families and residents here in Santa Barbara. So these are some of the photos that we have taken as we tour the site. This is a view, This is a view looking from Cabrillo Boulevard into the site. It's very open and very beautiful site. This is a view looking through the grove of trees at this point here, looking into the site. And then the next shot is the paseo that's looking from the south northward, right here. And then the actual wading pool looking this direction. And then the bike trail in the back, that is a very popular bike trail for all the residents. Okay, so moving on to the next sheet. Okay, so next sheet shows the concept design for this project. And one thing we want to sort of highlight is that the boundary, the property line, is 20 feet away from the center line of the street. From the center line, from the edge of the curb, and it is 59 feet away from the center line of the street. So, really, there is quite a bit of setback already within relative to the edge of the curb in Cabrillo Boulevard. And then looking at the programming aspect of this new playground, essentially it's very similar to the current playground where there is a wet area that is defined by the splash pad. That was highlighted by Justin earlier, what it might look like. And again, it tries to tell the story of the Santa Barbara Harbor with the waves. That's part of the splash pad design, and then a Harbor Patrol boat right here. There's also a lifeguard station that functions as a slide at the corner. And so this is constituted the wet play area with seating around. The dry area pretty much remains at the same location that we have currently. It's defined by the kelp forest. Try to recall the kind of marine wealth and diversity that people normally can't see and experience. So that's located right here with the seagrass tunnel for kids. And then there's also the starfish sculpture kind of interactive play element at the corner here. There's also an AstroTurf play area that's more flexible if people wanted to sit down on the AstroTurf or any kind of flexible use. There are 3 new palm trees being proposed to go with the existing palm vegetation that's already there. And then surrounding this entire site, and then one thing to mention is we have created this sand dune landscape along the northern edge of our project. And this is really in response to the community's desire to protect the black crown night heron nesting ground here, and then the buffer it's made of native plants. It's 22 feet away from the tree grove, so it creates a nice separation between the play area and then the roosting ground for the birds. There's also a sliding play structure here that is trying to, again, educating the kids about the black crowned night heron right next to the structure. There is a new restroom that the architect will present later. It's 2 stalls with some service use in the back. So finally, the entire site is surrounded or designed with a 6-foot-high fence for security reasons, because we are next to a major road, and then so the desire to have some kind of safety within this project. The main entrance comes in from the Paseo here. These are service entries, and then with an emergency entrance exit right here. So that's the short end of our design. Let's move on to the next sheet. Okay, so we continue with the paving design, paving materials. It's pretty simple. It's 2 materials. The first one is a kind of integral concrete paving. The color is it's earth toned. Try to kind of recall or relate back to the sand dunes, the sand landscape that's right there next, close to us. And perhaps there might be seashells or some kind of mineral elements embedded in the concrete. Again, to recall this maritime location we're situated. There's rubberized surfacing here right below the play structures for safety reasons, and that way it protects the children as they're playing above. Also, to mention with this plan, you can see the existing outline of the wading pool. So as you can see, our splash pad area is actually smaller than the current wading pool. Okay, so let's go to the next sheet. Okay, so here is architecture.
Okay, and so in the south corner of the project, we have a small restroom building that will also house some of the equipment for the splash pad. It's not exactly known how big this equipment room needs to be, so we made provisions with a gable roof that can extend or shrink as needed for that. Our goal was to get a couple accessible restrooms with a shared wash basin area that is has a gate on each side to allow people to come in from either side and good visibility through the gate. On the roof plan, we kept the roof form very simple with a gable roof and a parapeted roof next to it, reflecting but not copying the Cabrillo or the Los Baños bathhouse. For the Secretary of Interior schedule or standards, we want to complement it but not actually copy it. So you'll notice some of the metal work is simple, and the colors reflect it, and the opening proportions reflect the bathhouse, but the details would be a little bit different. We would use a similar color and material palette, though. Moving on to the elevations, we have a couple precedent images for openings where our goal is to naturally ventilate the bathrooms where we need a lot of free area, so grills at the openings of the restroom, but also the equipment room, and keeping the proportions of the openings flexible by having a tile sloped sill below that at each of the openings. And then also very simple metal gates and very simple, very similar material palette to the bathhouse next door.
So going back to landscape, this sheet depicts the site furnishings within this project. So the thought regarding these site furnishings is that it wants to recall, again, the language and the colors of the Santa Barbara Harbor. So it's red and white and gray, so it has that kind of experience as you're in the playground. There is currently we're proposing a 6-foot high fence surrounding the site for security, mentioned earlier, and there's also a 2-foot high barrier along this edge of the landscape sand dune areas. Again, as an effort to protect the habitat that's in the sand dunes, as well as a nesting ground for the crowned night heron. There are existing lights that we are keeping, and then there's also a accessible shower right here. And then the entire playground is ADA accessible. In fact, we are exceeding the needs of ADA access during our design process. Okay, so the next page, we just want to kind of start showing a little bit of our thoughts, the visions for some of these key areas versus the splash pad with a Harbor Patrol boat, and then the kelp forest, and then the black-crowned night heron slides. Okay, so this is the perspective of the Harbor Patrol splash pad area. Again, we think, these days there's so many innovative and creative ways of engaging children, and a lot of these ideas actually are custom. So in an effort to recall the context and the history of this place, but also designing it so that it's really fun and interactive and it's very visually stimulating, so that kids could really enjoy and really play in this area. So these are the rubberized surfacing to simulate the waves, and there's also water sprays on the boat to kind of interact with the kids, and then some of the splashing white water and jets here and there. And this is the lifeguard station. And these are elements that are authentic to Santa Barbara Harbor, as you can see in these pictures here. So we're literally trying to replicate what was already there here. This sheet shows some of the precedents, just to kind of let everyone know that the creative potential of these playgrounds that are designed all over the country. And this one actually is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then people invest a lot of resources and thoughts and efforts in creating these very fun, interactive places. So we think that Santa Barbara really, it would be great for Santa Barbara to have one of these playgrounds for the kids, and it would be one of a kind that currently does not exist in any of the parks here in Santa Barbara. This sheet shows a perspective of the slide. Again, to kind of clarify is that the head of the bird, black crowned night heron, is actually perching or is resting on the sand dune. So it's, if you think of it, the first half of the head and the shoulder above is actually, popping above the sand dunes, but the rest of it behind the bird and all this landscape is part of that whole sand dune native species design. So as you're from the corner Cabrillo looking in, you might get a glimpse of something that's very interesting, and then the kids will want to come and really find out what's going on. So. And then this next one shows the kelp forest climbing structure. And so the goal of this design, again, we looked at many different precedents, and we feel that this approach is really most applicable to this site, given that the play environment is actually surrounded by this very thin netted membrane where there's a lot of transparency, and you could actually see through these netted surfaces looking through into the harbor, into the boats. So it kind of gives you both the play experience as well as visibility across the play structure. So this is the perspective of that. Again, it's inspired by this kelp forest. As you can see, this is kind of the way it grows, and how wonderful would it be for children to imagine that they're in the water and climbing up this forest of kelp, vegetation, and then playing and then connecting them through these tunnels that are netted as well.
This is a perspective from a child's height as well.
Right, right. And then these are the seagrass tunnels where you could either climb over it or under it. So again, it's pretty unique. We think that could be fun for the kids. This last elevation shot rendering, it's taken from Cabrillo Boulevard. As you can see, this is the current ficus tree growth, and then bus stop right there. And then so the elevation of all these different play components are shown here relative to the height of a person. And then the lifeguard station being here, and then the various heights of this climbing structure, and then the sliding, the swing set over here. The dashed line shows the existing height of the play structure, playground area. So that concludes our presentation. Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we will open public comment. We will open public comment. So we have one speaker slip, and then I have some letters to read as well. So this is Skip Abed. If you can come.
One of you will need to relinquish your seat.
Yes. Should it?
Great, thank you. All right. I better press that, but there we go. So you could state your name for the record and, well.
Good afternoon. Skip Abed. I'm the owner of the Santa Barbara Sailing Center, also president of the Harbor Merchants Association, and I sit on the board of Visit Santa Barbara, our tourism bureau here in Santa Barbara. I'm excited about this project. I'm 100% all in favor of seeing this project happen. Not having the kids' pool across the way has not been a nice thing for our community, for the kids, families, and I think this is a great thing. They've thought about all aspects, from the birds to the safety. Also, our big issue right now with water, even though it's raining out today. They've taken this all into account, and I've heard them speak over at the site, and it was they seem like they've been very thorough. We got the support from the Parks and Rec, from what I could perceive on that day as well. And I think this is just a great community thing for our harbor, also for the front door of Santa Barbara. I mean, we're looking good right now with the everything happening down on Lower State Street. We finally got our curb appeal back. It's been kind of mismatch and not looking as nice. So this will be another element to bring some more life to that. Also, with the recent, September being, now we're in October, but September being the highest month of cruise ships, and see more cruise ships, this shows a little bit more of introduction to the guests and visitors that come through that corridor to see that we don't just have a vacant area that's just sitting unfinished and not kept. So I think this is a great opportunity for the community and our visitors. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so, all right, I'm going to just read a couple more of these. Let's see. Okay, so we should have 5 letters here. So we'll just go through them. What first is from Christina Marshall. She is in support. Mom with 2 young kids, lives in Santa Barbara at least 10 years. Absolutely loves the idea of a splash playground. And she knows many moms who go elsewhere to have something like this. So, all right. Emily Young is in support. She's unable to attend, and then she points out there's no other parks like this. They love the outdoors, and it would be a great addition to the city. All right, full support of it. Then Karen Downs is in support. She has fond memories of visiting West Beach Mushroom Pool as a child. She'd love her daughter and grandchildren to make their own memories. She's a government employee who works directly with public, and having this amazing feature for our visitors would be beneficial to our tourism. All right, and then we have Devin Turner. Says he's unable to attend the meeting. He's visited a handful of splash parks in Salt Lake City and others. He was impressed. What impressed him most was the thoughtful, natural-looking designs and well-maintained facilities. The splash pad that was his favorite was the Draper City. Let's see. Summers are getting only hotter. Does the current design include shade structures that cover any portion of the park? Thank you, and he looks forward to this becoming a reality. Tara Brown, she says, please consider adding educational signage from the about the night herons and egrets. The architects assured us in an earlier visit these trees would not be cut down. However, at least 3 of us came to the preliminary design review meeting concerned about the acceptance of the bird's nest in such to be popular area, or to be such a popular area. She's lived in West Beach. She's watched the night herons get displaced when the city, so she's concerned about the night herons. Please educate the public to appreciate and preserve our unique environment. The seabirds are more historic than any building or splash pad area. All right, and it looks like we have another member of the public, Tara Taylor.
Hi, I've been following this project pretty actively just because it is very exciting for me. I'm a relatively new mom in the community. I've been here for about a year, and I've lived in other communities that had splash parks. And I have to tell you, for both the community as well as like the shopping areas, it's a win-win situation because it gives an opportunity for parents to have their kids play in a safe environment because there's a lot less risk in a splash park than there is, of course, in standing water. So that's very exciting for me. And I think it's also a good thing for the shopping area in that area. And just like the gentleman from the harbor said, I think it fits in very well with the community and the area and is a great beacon to people who are coming into Santa Barbara on cruise ships and just touring the beach area. I'm very excited by it.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments from the public? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comments and back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Drury.
Mr. Chair, well, I guess my first question is about the birds. That was sort of...
Or the mics?
Or the microphone. Is it okay if I have it on? Okay. Was I breathing too hard before? I tend to do that. So the birds were an unintended consequence of those ficus growing to a certain height, is my understanding. And so we had sidewalk art placed below, and suddenly the birds were there. And I wondered if there was any opportunity to not remove them.
Remove
the trees or the
birds? Remove just the birds?
Just the birds, yeah.
You're talking about the slide bird? Or the bird
No, that's a bird that's not going to do any damage. No, I'm thinking that it's a real problem at that little corner where the walkway goes between this project and the pool.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
members of the commission, if I could
Yep.
answer that question. So we have hired a biologist who specializes in this type of bird. They are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty, and therefore this is a roosting habitat. They're there for several months out of the year, and then they leave and migrate. Through the process of this biological study, we've learned a lot about the birds. That's why we're trying to give them a little bit more of a buffer than they had previously with the pool. But keep in mind, the pool was active when the before the birds came. And this seems like a suitable alternative to a splash pad is the playground. I mean, the wading pool is a splash pad. So
Okay, thank you.
And in terms of water usage, the splash pad would be less wasteful than a pool with evaporation and so on. And how deep is the water in a splash pool?
The splash pad, the splash pad is actually really shallow. It's basically a plaza with jets and water coming up and down. So all that water gets recirculated, drained, and filtered. That's why it's more efficient in terms of water use.
Okay. There's no standing water. The water's moving towards a drain.
Okay.
Right.
And then it just gets recycled? Mm-hmm. And then could you explain this mysterious leak? Where is it?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, one of the problems is there is a leak. It would take quite a bit of destructive testing to find the leak. We've already tried the typical ways. And with that and with the drought and the accessibility requirement to put in a ramp, we've chosen to take this facility offline until we had a chance to pursue this master plan of the splash pad.
Okay, then my only other question would be, do you plan to, or is there an opportunity to remove the guano on the sidewalk that is covering up a rather nice piece of public art?
By removing the birds? No, sorry. Go ahead.
That would be.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, I think the big issue is two things. One is the birds are protected, so when they are roosting, you don't want to do any type of power washing underneath them. And two, we've got a drought, so power washing is and the fact that it is this guano, which has a lot of other issues that can't just go into a storm drain. There's a lot of different problems. So I believe it was just recently cleaned up now that the birds are gone and brushed to the side.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, what's the material for the perimeter fence?
It would be metal, powder-coated metal, marine grade metal.
Would it be chain link or would it be?
Oh, no. It will be, depending on budget, it's yeah, it will be powder-coated metal.
Is your mic on you?
It's
Yeah.
wrought iron.
Wrought iron.
Solid wrought iron.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lynn, just to be clear, are you talking about
Yes. The 6-foot.
So you haven't decided what the material will be for the fence?
It would be wrought iron, and it's powder coated, so that it withstands any kind of corrosion from.
Be able to see through it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. It's a
So
picket fence.
And this is the current design for it? Sorry.
It's very similar to what was just put up at the Cabrillo Ballpark.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's.
That's what we used as a guide
The
for right now.
the other question that I have is you note that there's one place where you have artificial turf.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What about the rest of the site? What is it covered with? It looks like it's grass or something.
Right.
You want
Let's
to
go
flip to
back to that drawing. Sure.
These seem to be like splash pad proof drawings too.
Let's go back to this. Okay.
No, it's the one that what page is that?
L1.01.
L1.
Do the second sheet and you're set.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yep.
So area 15 is you note as artificial turf.
That's right.
And then the 22-foot buffer over here.
Yes.
What is all of this?
This is native planting.
Planting.
So it's
And these areas here?
These are all, we're going as native as we can. So these are all native coastal plants, whether it's sand dune, shrubs, and ground covers.
So it's just that one little area that's artificial
Yes,
turf?
because it's an active area for kids, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. House.
The fence was my main question. Are there any other illustrations of the design of the fence other than that last page we were looking at?
Yeah, currently we don't have
Okay.
it. Yeah,
That-
we
that's
just have
pretty
a simple
representative of what you're
elevation. Yeah,
thinking.
right, wrought iron picket fence, 4 inches on center.
And
Yeah.
6 feet, 8 feet?
6 feet,
6 feet,
yeah.
okay. And is there a provision for a covered walkway, that paseo that goes to the parking lot, where it goes under the trees?
Right,
That's a particularly hazardous area as a pedestrian when the birds are roosting there. So I think it should be considered to have some kind of covered walkway through there.
And you want to rephrase that as the question? Has it been considered?
Has it been considered?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, has been considered, and one of the issues is just clearance, because that is an area where vehicles do travel through in an emergency and do deliver chemicals and need access for repairs for the existing pool.
Is that to say that you're not able to accommodate that, or just?
The original study was that it would need to be 14 feet plus, and it didn't seem like it could be accommodated with the existing trees.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Mr. House?
No.
All right, Commissioner Arias?
Yes, thank you. Okay, have you considered the possibility? Have you considered the possibility of a low-lying fence at the top of the dunes separating the trees from children? Because I live next to a park that is designed for children, and I can tell you they're very clever about getting around. And you don't want to plant poison oak, but you need to protect that area. I've thought about it more than once. So I would, a low-line fence around that area, at the top, right, just separating the trees. What material are you using for the kelp?
For the kelp play structure, Jenna, if you could help me with that one. It's,
Well, let me put my concerns about it is that children climb on everything, and this looks like it could be kind of a hazardous situation with the kelp. And I don't know if it's flexible plastic or what, but you should think very carefully about the little munchkins and what they're doing, because they really get lively.
Yeah.
You indicated there would be only 2 bathrooms, 2 stools, or
2 stalls, correct.
for the number of children that you're anticipating. Don't you think they need a few more bathrooms?
Yeah, and that's a concern. You may elaborate on this, but there's
Yeah.
several restrooms in the area.
Less than 500 feet away, there's the restrooms for, I believe it's Marina 4, that just received a renovation, and it has a clear path of travel from this paseo right over to that other set
Then
of
I would
restrooms.
also recommend that if you do not increase the number of stalls, which I think you should, that you may clearly indicate areas where additional restrooms are, because usually by the time the small children have to go, there isn't much time. You mentioned about possibly putting shells embedded in concrete. I look at this and I see skateboarding, running, all sorts of things, and hitting a shell and going bang. So again, you've got to look at the safety thing.
Yes.
The artificial turf that you're mentioning, is this the kind that is created with residues of rubber? That's all right. I didn't have much lunch. Rubber? Because those have been proven to be carcinogenic.
Yes.
And they're not recommended on playgrounds anymore. So I would make very careful exactly what kind of turf you're going. And again, let's see. Somehow protecting that walkway would be a nice idea, but maybe you could it be diverted around that area during the time of proliferation?
Has there been any look at that? of a diverted path, or is it?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission,
I don't know.
if you came and parked within the parking lot that's provided by the harbor, you would probably park somewhere to the west, and you'd walk in, and there's a path of travel that's right along here. So once you've visited this park the first time, the likelihood that you would enter through here is much higher than parking on the street and walking through the trees and birds.
The last point I want to recommend to you is to make, we're twins today, that you look very carefully at security, police security at night, and that you think very carefully about the activities of small children who parents don't always supervise very carefully because they're in a park there, they're safe. And the next thing you know, they're hurt or something is wrong. So, and the city is liable. So please look very carefully at the safety of the residents. The park that I have has a little kind of a house in it. It's down in the bottom. It's delightful. The kids come and they play in the house. But they didn't move the house so that the door can be seen by a floodlight from the police car driving down Torino Drive. And we have some very interesting activities that occur in that house at night. And believe me, they aren't children. So you've got to think about the downside and the protection of the children, because you don't want to have injured children. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Vena?
Great questions. I assume this is going to be free.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that's correct. It will be free. It will be locked. It's fully gated with a 6-foot fence, so it will be locked. And when it is open, we're conceptually thinking maybe 10 o'clock, maybe later, and then we'd have the ability to close it, say, at dawn or earlier. So it's a free facility, but it would be locked during the nighttime.
And so that means that you'd have security lights from above so that...
There are several existing lights that provide lighting in that area.
Could be light pollution, so concerned about that. How high, what's the height of your green structure?
Great question. So the height, it varies from 11 feet to 16.
To what?
Yes.
Can you point out?
11, one of them is at 16, and the lowest one is at 11. So going back to this
And would it be
one.
climbable from both sides? I mean, it looks like it would be accessible for kids to climb from the outside.
Well, the goal is that they would be able to climb from the inside, but not
Yes.
from the outside.
Not from the outside.
Right.
You'd have security for that.
That's right. Yeah.
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Commissioner Van?
Yes.
Benedict?
I'm going to step back in my question for you from what the other members have been looking at. You've shown us what your design inspiration is for the playground area, and yet you're in a historic area of Santa Barbara. Did you give any consideration at all to as part of your inspiration to the historic architecture and the historic landscape that we have in Santa Barbara, and see if you couldn't find a way to integrate some of those elements into your design, as opposed to the local environment, the fishermen or the lifeguard towers or the buoys or whatever. I mean, did you play with that side of inspiration when you started?
I mean, we did do some research regarding the historical landscapes in Santa Barbara, and we sort of felt that the historical landscapes were designed for a very different purpose. It was more for more passive use, more of a kind of strolling through the park. So the language of these kind of axial, cross-axis kind of design language was a little challenging, to be clear, to be honest, in the process of designing a playground for kids, and thinking about that kind of historical language applying to a playground environment. You know, how would that actually pan out?
I'm not sure that the children, I mean, I like your idea for the kelp forest playground structure. You know, I like the splash pad. But what we don't see in any of this, or or beyond those elements, we don't see anything that reflects, you know, what a lot of people are coming to Santa Barbara for. They're getting off the cruise boat and they're walking along this area, and I'm not sure what they're looking for, but I'm not sure they're looking for harbor patrol boat up on the beach. My comment or question. And so I just kind of wondered if you really played with the idea of how do I examine what Santa Barbara is known for and resolve that into a play environment.
I'd like to field that question.
Okay.
So, through the design charrette that we had on site, we had several different options, and we had a large group of community members, some of them that you heard speak today. One of the things that we really worked at was kind of honing in on true Santa Barbara, not just a boat, not a ship, but something that is specific to the harbor of Santa Barbara. It's almost an identical harbor boat that you'd see. And as a child, you see those, and that's something that you're drawn to because you're not allowed to go up on it. Very similar is the almost identical lifeguard tower that you go by all the time, not allowed to go in it. That's almost an identical replica of the lifeguard tower that is on East Beach. So yeah, there was a lot of things that we looked at to make sure that it was representing Santa Barbara's flavor on the beach itself.
Okay.
Thank you. I had I had some similar questions, but they've been answered. But I had a question about since the architecture hasn't been put into the hot seat yet. If we can flip to, you had a little snippet of showing Los Baños, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about. Well, first, if you had additional pictures. There we go. So
what page is that?
Page
Oh, I got it.
A2.
A2.
And right with the pointer there. I just want to kind of make sure I'm understanding how you're thinking about this building. So you're using the kind of combo of parapet and tile roof found here. You're picking up some of the detail here, sort of similarities. Looks like you're trying the massing similarly as well. The windows kind of played off, and then I'm not sure if you had any additional thoughts on, and I'm not sure if you know this, but we'll just be fair. We'll kind of throw it out there first. That oftentimes people get caught between the Secretary of Interior Standards, generally speaking, and the Santa Barbara Secretary of Interior Standards. On the main point where I'm seeing that some of the issues that you're bringing up is we actually like it to be the same. It could be different within the language that it is, but to sort of shift the language to something that is totally different. And I wanted to see if you had any additional thoughts on that, or if you it looks like you've kind of worked that thinking well, like more of the Santa Barbara way in your windows, whereas with the doors and the screens, you kind of went in a different, on a different take of it. And I just wanted to see if you had any additional thoughts of that, or if you had any additional imagery of Los Baños that you might have looked at.
And this is really conceptual, where the gate work is very simple. But yeah, the goal was not to replicate what was there, but to be influenced by it. So if there's a little bit more ornament in the metalwork that we can reflect, we can definitely look at that. As far as some of the patterning for the openings, there's a lot of smaller openings on the, I'll use the pointer. Over here about this I want to call it the grills, and that felt a little heavy for some of our openings, but seeing if we can abstract that a little bit to pull it apart to reflect that, but not necessarily copy it.
Okay. Great.
I had another question.
Yeah. Commissioner Ross.
What is the inspiration or precedent for this kind of chevron pattern to those doors?
Yeah, again, it's just looking at these smaller openings.
They have
a
chevron pattern to them?
It has this cross pattern.
Yeah, more like
and seeing it, can we pull that apart a little bit to make it a little bit more open?
So as an abstraction of that.
Yeah, because at night we want to secure it, but still keep it so it's visible through it. And if you go back to the plan view, it was very important on plan that we can look from either side all the way through this, so there's visual control.
I got that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have another question, if I might.
Commissioner Lendick.
For Parks and Rec, what's the life of a playground structure? I mean, I noticed on Upper Santa Barbara Street, the big, wooden one that was put in 8 or 10 years ago has been totally replaced for whatever.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, let me see if I can field that question. It really depends on the type of playground. So the typical playground, like for instance, the one that was put on East Beach over by the Cabrillo Pavilion a couple years ago, that's slated for somewhere between a 10 and a 15-year turnaround, so it would be replaced at that point in time. As I said in the opening, has to do with lots of different reasons. Sometimes it just ages based on the amount of use that it gets, its environment by the ocean, or a lot of times it's just safety because laws change so quickly. And so that's maybe a 10 to 12. The Kids World, which was an all-wood playground, we recently redid that, and that just received a bunch of different upgrades as far as safety and structural upgrades. That was required after 20 years.
Yeah,
really?
20 years.
Long, huh?
20 years.
20 years. And that was a special situation because one, on a yearly basis, it's oiled down, and that helped keep the life of the wood in good condition. And then the other is that it's really close to that gigantic fig tree, so it's in shade most of the time.
Do you sense the life of these structures?
I would say that we're going to try to get a little bit more life out of the splash pad itself because it's a little bit more of a cross between a playground and a pool. And pool, say, you could get 30 years out of it before you have you're starting to have issues, and it would have the ability to change out some different components of the splash pad, whereas maybe the kelp climber wouldn't have that long of a life.
What about the boat and the lifeguard station and the bird? I mean,
depending on what materials they end up with, but that could be more in the 20-year lifespan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, to the commission for comments.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drury.
Turn on your mic.
Mics, everybody, mics.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Drury.
My first comment would be, actually, this is not a comment, it's a question. Have you thought about putting a tomo canoe instead of the harbor patrol boat?
What kind of canoe?
The Chumash canoe.
Oh, Chumash.
Commissioners, yes, that was one of the original designs that was shown to the design during the design charrette.
Okay, so that's been, at least it's on the table, sort of. Okay. That's the only other question. So then, this is an aside, but anybody here who was involved in the Cabrillo Ballpark deserves a huge amount of credit. This is completely off subject, but I see it every day, twice a day. And it's unbelievably well made, and people are using it as picnic areas on the outside. I would only hope that this project has the same success. That being said, I think that there needs to be more attention paid to the generating of heat on a summer day, because the sun's beating straight down. I don't see a whole lot of shade. I really think that that's essential. One of the things about the mushroom that I remember when I was 3 or 4 years old is sitting under the mushroom shade and having water pouring over me. I mean, and then you step out into the pool and, stagger around as 3-year-olds do. And I think shade is an essential part of this, because it's with the parking lot right there, the sun beating straight down in July and August, you're going to have some kind of relief from that. And then the only, and this is sort of just a general idea. I think that the minimal amount of architecture, which is this building, which will be the restrooms and changing rooms for babies, I suppose. I think that that's something that's easily dealt with. I mean, whatever we come up with or you come up with, it seems to be very innocuous, and it seems actually to be very sort of recessive visually. It sits there, it does its job, because all the stuff that's going on in these complex sculptures, the kelp forest, that's where the attention is going to be paid by kids. And I would disagree with Commissioner Lemick on the point of who's going to look at it and why does it not reflect the architectural heritage, because it's for kids. And I think that they're interested in birds and sharks and lifeguard towers and the kelp forest as opposed to Mission Revival. So I think that you're going in a really good direction in that respect. And I think that they seem really large in the plans, but then when you have that size comparison, which is really important, they don't seem nearly as obtrusive. They don't seem to be 30 feet tall like they look when you first see them, because you're looking at it from a kid's point of view, correct? So I think that this is, as a first iteration, I think that it's something that is definitely wanting. It's been moribund for far too long. It's a potentially very active social place for young mothers to meet other young mothers and their kids to play. And I love the idea, the fact that it's part of our heritage, and it's innocent. It's educational in a really subtle way, but it's innocent, and it's where children should be. And I'm very much appreciative of your efforts.
All right. Commissioner Mann?
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting project, and I think of it more as a sculpture garden than architecture. I disagree with the Chumash canoe, although I think the kids see the harbor boats and that patrol boat or whatever it is, and that's what hits them. And I don't think most of the children at this age know about the Chumash planked canoes, which were very interesting. But
they didn't shoot water either. So.
Yeah, right. So I'm very positive about all of the children's sculptures and the way you've designed them. I think that they're exciting. I agree with the question of Commissioner Orias that this bathroom is not large enough. Walking to the restrooms at Marina 4 is, first of all, you're going across the parking lot. I happened to be at that parking lot last Sunday, and it was absolutely full. It was really busy with cars. I think that's a real intrusion for these mothers to have to take their kids and walk 500 feet or however far it is. I think this restroom should be much bigger. It should be big enough to have these fold-out diaper changer things. Maybe you thought of that. It should be a much bigger restroom. And I can't support the architecture. It's two different buildings stuck together, and I don't think it works. I think that the play sculpture is so creative that I think that the restroom should also be creative. I think of the little filling station out outside of Goleta, that when you drive by, it's such a beautiful little building. And you just I just wish we could pick it up and bring it into Santa Barbara and put it down someplace where it'd be appreciative. And I think that this little restroom should also be that kind of a building. It is the one piece of architecture in the project that I'm going to have to make a finding that it's compatible with El Pueblo Viejo. I don't believe that this building that I'm looking at on A1 is compatible with El Pueblo Viejo, and I don't believe that it's big enough to serve the population that is going to be at this park. This is going to be jam-packed with mothers and children, and they're all going to have to go to the bathroom sooner or later. But generally speaking, I'm very, very positive about your project and supportive of it.
All right, Commissioner House?
Getting in touch with my inner little kid, I agree with the comments that have been made, and I think I like the juxtaposition of this very kid environment on the fabric of Santa Barbara. I also agree about the restroom building. I don't really support it being a mini Los Baños, and I think it ought to have whimsy to it. And one thing you might go look at is the new Moxie Museum. That fits in the fabric of Santa Barbara, but it's very imaginative. So I think there's all sorts of fun that you could have with that. And I think it's very important to have some kind of covered walkway under those trees, because obviously it doesn't have to be any taller than the clearance of the branches right now. So if you get equipment through there now, it really doesn't have to occupy a larger space than that. And there are other attractions in the neighborhood, the band shell in the park across the street. There are hotels around. So people will be coming from other locations besides the park. So I think it's important to make that a safe environment to walk through.
Commissioner Arias?
I like the idea of the splash pond. I guess I'll be a little old to use it, but it's a good idea. I think you need to think into the future of the length of time that you have and the water rising levels. They're becoming more and more of a reality, and this is in a vulnerable area. I think also you need to look very carefully at your projects with regard to safety and know that children sometimes don't connect and do the right sensible thing. And they climb and they jump and they do things that aren't right and they get injured. The shells embedded in the concrete is a lovely idea, but the first person that trips, bang. The idea of some shade, I think, is important. The sun has become more and more cause of myeloma, and shade is something that should be available there. And I also would like to see assured bird security, that little children can't go up the hill to see the bird because, so I like the project. I think it could add a tremendous amount to the city and all, but I think you have to recognize that it's going to be extremely popular and accommodate those people, and also at the same time look at the fact that we do have a warming system going, and this is at the level where it will be inundated. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Benya?
A couple of things. I agree with the bathrooms. I mean, it's just ridiculously small. It's just basically one holders, and that's just not going to be enough for any group of people. It's like you're having a concert. And anyway, the other is, are you planning paths below some of these climbing edifices that you have?
Yes.
Because otherwise, some of them are going to fall off anyway.
Right. That's why that rubberized surfacing, the blue color that's shown, it's all meant to protect them.
I like the colors and so forth, but at the same time, it's right on the waterfront, and there's restaurants and everything else around there. And, I don't think that kids really mind what color the things are if they can climb on them and so forth. So I don't know how the rest of the group feels about toning down some of the colors, maybe demoligas or something like that, so that the darker colors will blend into the horizon as opposed to standing out like Santa Monica. Mm-hmm. And that's a bit of my concern.
On your standards, maybe you could put some seagrass on some of those to make it like you were talking about, so that you can have some movement to them. And, yes, you can have the lights and have the illumination that you're looking for, but I think you're kind of missing some of the grass in some of the places, as opposed to just because it's U.S. standard vertical sign lighting that we need. And I think it can be handled a little bit differently. Also, perhaps the color of lighting, so that it doesn't become a pollution, so that we can have some kind of a lesser intensity. What about pruning the trees when the birds aren't there heavily, so that we can kind of minimize that, and you can control the trees as opposed to the trees and the birds controlling us. The other thing is, I think I've seen power washing taking place on the downtown streets and so forth, so I don't understand why you can't power wash that small area there for the safety of people and sanitary conditions and so on. Anyway, those are my questions.
Mr. Chair.
Sure, yes.
Question: if the birds are protected, demolishing their nesting sites might be not acceptable. That would have to be looked at very, very carefully. I mean, we saw a lot of problems with the monarch butterflies. And so I would make sure that you do it because there are significant, well, not significant, but we've had letters that are saying protect those birds, so look at it very carefully. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Vania, anything else? Any other
No,
comments?
nothing
That's
else.
it?
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Lenvik?
Yes. My observation of splash pads and their use always has intrigued me from the standpoint of the kids love pulsing water, jets of water, sheets of water. That's the giggle factor. That's the fun factor. That's the running around factor. And I don't know that you're having a lot of that in here. You certainly could make it architectural from the standpoint of what's happening, and water becomes music. And I would encourage more of that. And I personally am not enamored with the Harbor Patrol boat as a feature in the splash pad area. So it's going to work. I agree with Julio's comment about the colors of the furniture, and I think that, and I agree with the comments regarding the restroom building. But to get any kind of meaningful quantity of fixtures in that building, it's going to become a huge building. My comments.
All right, and so to add to those, and I think it might be different in some of them, but so I think I'll separate the architecture and landscape for a minute. So for the landscape, if we can kind of flip to the perspectives, maybe. And actually, in particular, we'll go to the kelp for a minute. So when I look at this, I think very much along the lines of this might be the Netherlands, this might be these other places, but how this, and I think you've done a step in the right direction job with going here. This is a little bit more Santa Barbara-ish. It's kind of going a little bit more towards there. But I get that your inspirations were based around, but I still think there was a lot of validity in the comments that Commissioner Lenvik was making in that it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal Spanish colonial revival landscape plan or other things like that. But this, when I kind of look at this snapshot, this could be anywhere. This could be inspiration from other plants or other things. And it is it has a Santa Monica-esque or whatever, wherever-esque that everyone's doing this flavor. So I get the fun factor or things like that, but at the same time, you also have to look at, I mean, a great example is that the Castle Park, where it doesn't have to look like, okay, yeah, that was definitely when these type of things were in vogue. It kind of has a classic element to it that it works with that park, and it's great, and so it doesn't have to stick out in this way. So I'm torn about that. This is the most extreme example. I think actually the water side of things and the use of the boat. I'm not so much against the use of the boat. And if you look at the Castle Park again, they have a shark or whale or whatever. They're just these giant creatures just sitting there, and they're fun, and they climb on them, and that's all that works, and that's fine. That kind of this seems to be more the move that you're making on the with the harbor patrol and that seems to make sense more. But when you have a bigger move like this that really could be anywhere, that's when it seems to sort of fall apart a bit. So that's my own take. Other people have been fine with it, but just that one basic question is when you take that snapshot, do you know where you are, and how does it relate to that? That's the hardest question to do when it comes to a totally different vocabulary that you're trying to introduce. But I think that looking at the Moxie as an example of a way of integrating well into Santa Barbara and integrating things that have nothing to do with the 1920s, but it's integrating it kind of with it a little bit, and there's a little bit of back and forth. That seems to be would seem to be a little bit more of a in my opinion, a successful approach. Quite frankly, I think that all the pieces can be here. In general, it's all going to work out. But I think that some of that tweaking, if it happened, it would make it a much more Santa Barbara version of a kids' splash play park. Okay. And so and then jumping to the architecture now, I agree that it should restroom-wise be bigger. I had one other question that I forgot to ask was on the diagonal. I'm assuming that you're doing it on the diagonal just to address the way that people come to it quickly, or addressing that corner. Is that right or wrong?
There's that portion, and then there's also the deliveries that need to have access to the back of the building.
Okay. So on the diagonal is a pretty strong move, and when you have your grid kind of established right next to you, I might say take a look at that a little bit too. You don't necessarily have to summarize the building next door, like in miniature, like both roofs and things like that. I think just a complement to one or the other would be fine. That's my opinion of the architecture. But in general, I think that aside from sort of particular concerns, I guess I would say that to summarize, everyone's pretty encouraging about it, pretty behind almost everything as sort of pieces, and I think it's and I don't know how particularly you want the comments and divided, because I know there has been a little bit of my comments are sort of on one extreme in terms of wanting it to be more of a Santa Barbara obvious, especially with this one in particular. So I don't know if you want split votes or straw votes or things like that.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
Well, sorry,
too
what was
early
that?
for that. Too early for
okay.
that.
So do we want to summarize the comments, because they're a range, but...
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Commissioner Mann.
I would make a motion for to continue this to the Planning Commission to get their take on it. They have to do this coastal development permit, and I think we would send it with a general comment that we find this to be headed in the right direction. And once we get the Planning Commission's input on it, we come back, we look at it more specifically, and then we can do straw votes on all of these things.
Okay.
I would second that motion.
All right. Yeah. Under discussion?
Yes.
Discussion.
Yeah.
They haven't really considered palm trees. Palm trees don't take just a straight vertical. They can integrate palm trees as part of the structure and have a faux palm tree or what have you at the top. Also, likewise, for the shade that we spoke of that is necessary, we can have a grove of faux palm trees, and they can make them pretty realistic where people can sit beneath them, and keeping them in the scale with a human scale, I think it becomes more acceptable and and it blends into the surroundings much better. That's just my thought, so.
Mr. Chair?
I apologize, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Mr. Chair and Commissioner Drury. If you do want to forward it to Planning Commission, I would encourage you to at least address some of your comments in there. I know that they're a little divided, but you can say where some of the commission falls on it, so that when it does come back, you're still on the same page of what your comments were.
Okay.
And you should also be making the project compatibility criteria that it generally is meeting it so far.
Okay.
Sounds
good. So why don't I take a shot at summarizing the comments, and we can add to as needed. So one was that a shade structure of some sort be incorporated. That we were in general, everyone was for more restrooms.
And a different take on the architecture.
And a different take on the architecture. I think that was pretty universal.
That's fair.
All right. Ready? Okay. So let's see. Restroom architecture. We're concerned with safety in the environment, including the shells and those type of things, to make sure to take a look at all the safety issues. We were also concerned with needing to be traveling across the parking lot a lot for other things. So that was part of the restroom comment. The water, well, I guess we can put that into the future concerns as well. Rising water, I don't know how you address that, except for make everything waterproof. The colors, and I think this tied to a little bit more of a range of views, but I think in general everyone was pretty favorable about going more towards the Santa Barbara palette of colors.
Yeah.
And then as part of that, also the look. Some at least were concerned with it needs to look more Santa Barbara-ish, and especially with the landscape. And the trees, I think the tree and the bird, should we just state our concern and let the biologists handle it? Okay.
More security for the birds. We'll make sure that the birds are secure.
We're concerned with the birds. Is everyone generally speaking concerned with the birds?
Can we get a report? Can we get a brief report from the biologist on the birds?
Yeah.
I'm concerned with the bird byproducts. That's what I'm concerned about.
Well,
there's different bird concerns. But actually, that's an interesting question. Jurisdiction.
Chair
what should we be
Grumbine,
commenting on?
As far as the environmental review of this project, that will be undertaken through the DART process as it proceeds to Planning Commission. They are having a biologist report, and that will be reviewed, but it's not a design aspect.
Okay. All right.
The artificial turf.
Okay, artificial turf. I don't know if we really talked about that
I
much.
mentioned that I asked if it was made with synthetic rubber, which now has been determined to be carcinogenic.
Okay, so that would be as part of our safe
that.
environment concerns. And then okay, and we didn't discuss this, but what about the artificial turf as in general? We don't like artificial turf except for very specific
playground situation.
Very specific exceptions. And so would that be in general
What about a picnic area?
As a very it's a very close. In this project, it's a very particular only portion. So it seems to fit within our very particular guidelines, where it's not all over a very one little hill. It's not the hill to die on.
Mr. Chair, right. Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Rios.
There was also comments about the type of wrought iron fence that was going on around the perimeter. It would be power coated, and I think that needs to be further identified.
Yeah, so that'll be part of our continued process. But we were good that it was wrought iron.
Yes.
And that the finish in the.
I think the comment was that it was going to be similar to the ballpark wrought iron, which we approved, and which I think is painted brown.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Okay. All right. Any other?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Drury.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
I was going to see about the boats where there were some for and some against the boat, but mostly pro boat.
Pro boat.
Take a straw vote on a boat.
Okay. Let's do a straw vote on that one. All those for the boat. I can. All those against the boat. Indifferent?
I mean, the shade of
All right.
red might be the...
Yeah, colors can, okay. All right.
Terracotta.
Oh, God. Mr. Chair.
All right, Commissioner Drury.
I have two questions.
Yes.
What's wrong with Santa Monica, and where in Santa Monica is such a structure? Why does that make people reminisce about Santa Monica?
Maybe it's more the pier. I don't know. But I think the idea of a well, in my mind, when I look at it, Santa, it could be anywhere, Southern California. It could be anywhere across the country. It could be anywhere, even in Netherlands.
I don't know if that's true. I would say that's kind of a unique structure, and it reflects a kelp forest.
It's sculpture
and eelgrass, and I think it's lovely, quite frankly, and I would support that as presented.
I would too.
Okay, so we can at least say a split on the on whether it's Santa Barbara-esque enough.
Yeah, and obviously one other thing about the palette, if we feel that the palette is too strident, it's a question of just adding white to the color to cool it down. That's all that needs to be done. You can just do it by degrees. It doesn't have to be bright lime green. It can be pastel lime green.
All right.
Anyway,
okay,
that's all.
Any other things to add to that?
Mr. Chair, can you also add the project compatibility criteria since you're forwarding it to Planning Commission?
Okay, so in general, we're seeing that it is design is consistent with design guidelines applicable to the location of the project within the city. Yes, compatible with architectural character of the city neighborhood. In general, it is. They're not proposing something that we're going to be against red tile plaster, but that still needs to work to get to where we want it. Appropriate mass, bulk, height, and scale. I think we're in agreement with that. It just depends on the form. And then sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources. We're saying that it's stepped away, and we didn't have any concerns about that, except for that it was actually trying too hard to kind of capture both forms of the. Okay, then ocean views and mountains. We had the ocean view,
and mountain,
and we had in the mountains. So, and then the use of open space and landscape. Well, it's all open space landscape. So, yep. So we're finding it in general conforming with those. Any,
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner House?
Oh, yes. Did you say something in your comments about a covered walkway?
We talked about shade, but not the covered walkway for the birds, which is...
Yeah, I would like that to be included in there, that they should look at that further.
I would too.
And at least some of the commissioners thought that should be part of the future study or additional study.
Because there's a health concern when people are walking through bird droppings and stirring it up. There are diseases that come from that. So I think that's an important consideration. And my only final comment on colors is stay away from primary colors, get them a little more muddy, and potentially, for instance, in the case of this, using 3 different shades of green or something. So it's a little more organic and not just out of a kit or something like
Commissioner
that.
Howe's replace muddy with muted.
Muted, that's fine. Yeah. Secondary, tertiary.
and those colors comments. Okay, there we go. We got them. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I find it a real stretch to make compatibility finding number 2. Real stretch. I would rather that we say that compatibility finding number 2 is not appropriate or is not relevant.
Yeah.
But to make that finding, I find it a stretch.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, because mostly it's sculpture.
Yeah.
It's mostly sculpture. It's play sculpture. The only place where we would make the compatibility would be with the restroom.
Yeah, the architecture still has to be, and
the fencing.
That was the main part of my comments architecturally was about that. It was the plaster.
That's not what that says. That says it's compatible with the architectural character of the city. Period. Bottom line.
Commissioner Lenvik and Chair Grumbine, it's that it generally meets it, and you can include how it's meeting it or not meeting it, but that it's generally meeting it.
Okay, so we can say that for the build, first let's just separate the building from the landscape and say that.
Building and the fence.
Yeah. And so we're saying that in general, that's compatible. Plaster walls, red tile roof, wrought iron fence is generally compatible with that, number 2. The landscape, there is a disagreement as to whether this particular design is in keeping with Santa Barbara's landscape. Can we make that distinction for them? Okay. So there are some that think that this is incompatible, or as presented certain portions are, and others are okay with it because they see it as a sculpture.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question of staff. Our agenda says concept review, comments only. It doesn't say project compatibility analysis.
Correct, Chair Grumbine and Commissioner
Excuse
Rios.
me, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Prior to forwarding comments to Planning Commission, we go through these comments. This is not an approval. You forward those comments every time it goes to Planning Commission.
So we're just making comments related to those, but not making the findings.
Okay, as long as that is clear.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, all those, is that everything good?
Yep.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, unanimous. Going
Thank you
forward.
all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Did you have anything to do with the ballpark?
Oh, yeah.
It's just fantastic. You know, really, it's just. I can't remember if I saw Jill, but somebody asked me what I thought of it, and I just, I go by it at least twice a day.
What's the
on my way
voice
back and
excuse
forth.
for
It's
this?
just, I see people having.
What's Lavoie's excuse for not being here?
Try it on.
Oh, you. Is that right? Excellent.
Did you want to try on the hat?
It's a perfect day for it too, isn't it?
Bloody right.
Right? I know. Well, I feel so sort of plebeian and mundane after that presentation, I have to say.
Yeah, really.
Get you in touch with your inner child?
Did.
Good.
And since I've turned 65, that's getting more challenging, Steve.
All right.
Gotta have an adults' night at the playground.
Yeah.
All right, so now we have item 4, review after final, 1001 State Street. It's review after final is requested for various facade improvements, including maintaining the existing entrance and reducing the number of windows proposed at the. Sorry. Item number 4, 1001 State Street. Review after final is requested for various facade improvements, including maintaining the existing entrance and reducing number of windows proposed at the east elevation, reconfiguring the layout of existing corbels, and lowering the plaster feature at the west elevation entrance 36 inches than originally proposed. Project was last reviewed on August 8th, 2018. All right, can you please state your
Mr.
name?
Chair,
for the
Brian
record?
Cornell and Rogelio Solis. So I thought I should bring this back to the full board. The change is relatively minor, but it's important, so I want to make sure you all understand it. So I've created this side-by-side exhibit. So here is what you've approved on the left-hand side, and here is what we are proposing. Essentially, the issue is right here at the entrance. As it turns out, or actually in the original, even in the original approval, there is, let's go back to the plan real quick. So there is a shear wall that is here. And so we were placing those windows nevertheless in front of that shear wall, and it was basically a void. And obviously the work that it did was to continue that glass. But the owner really felt that that was, an unnecessary expense under the circumstances. And so what we've come back with is to leave that front entry element on State Street in the condition that it is and not have the windows in that section. We've provided also, and I can come back to these, we've got large elevations that you can look at, but we also have the rendered views of what that looks like. The other change to be clear, as you can see on this, we have a header element with the windows down lower. And another piece of input we got perhaps a little bit late in the process was, again, this desire to get as much light as possible into that second floor space. And in fact, from a structural standpoint, that header is unnecessary. We're actually furring down. So this new proposal brings the glass right up to the underside of that eave, and then the large beam elements, which of course are existing but will be relocated to coincide with those column elements, would be the pieces that would accept those beams. And so again, on these renderings on sheet A203, I think it helps to be able to see exactly what that is occurring. We have also, I think the final element, just to be clear on this, you can see on this approved plan, we had sort of changed the spacing consistently all the way around, but then we did, we kind of went back. We were keeping the original down here on that western or north side, northwestern side. Here what we're doing is basically keeping the existing beams that are in that on those blank wall locations. So in the middle section here off of Carrillo on the parking lot side to the west, and then back around the corner, those remain. But then we break that pattern as soon as these large window openings on the second floor occur and have them hit just at those columns so that it, again, is allowing that glass to go all the way up. One other very minor change is we lowered this entry element at the west elevation a little bit from what we had shown in that approved plan, which I think is more consistent with what we were doing on Carrillo. So that's again a minor thing. So the major piece here is to keep that, and then the beam placing in the position of that upper glass. And finally, again, you can see that in more detail on these sheets A201 and 202. So you've got larger elevations to see the detail. But that smaller sheet that I've been pointing out is obviously gives you the side-by-side of what you previously approved and what we are proposing.
Okay.
And I still don't know who the tenant is.
Or you're not going to say.
No,
You did
honestly,
know.
my guess is as good as anyone's.
Yeah.
Levi Strauss.
No, it's not Levi Strauss. I'm sure of that.
All right. So is that your
complete,
presentation?
yeah.
Okay.
Did I forget
So,
anything?
open public comment. Seeing no one, I will close public comment and back to the commission for questions.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner House, he was first off the drop.
Yeah, squeak draw. So these corbels are existing and remaining where they are.
Correct.
And that conveniently works out perfectly with the spacing around these pairs of windows, or did you arrange the windows so they were centered between those?
No, I think it just ended up working.
Because that would
Isn't that
be
right?
Okay.
Ended up working.
So it kind of worked. It ended up working here and there in the same fashion.
So that would be important. And these corbels, where we have these stucco columns, are the same width as those?
Yes.
And how wide are the corbels?
They're 10 inches.
10 inches,
So
okay, so
from
they're
10 inch
sizable.
to 10 inch, they go to.
Yeah, they have a little tapered
Okay.
component at the bottom.
Okay.
We've got those drawn larger, don't we?
And so basically what you did is the window sizes are the same, they just shifted up higher, because there's less space there than there is there.
think that's-
And they're still 4 lights high.
I think that's correct. This we were cutting the sill a little
Yeah,
bit, right?
there's an existing concrete sill here,
Oh.
so we're trying to avoid
Okay,
that,
yeah.
and we brought the sill up.
And did you explore just sticking with this spacing for the rest of it?
We did, and it just looked a kind of anemic.
Okay.
You know, so that's why we decided to keep that tighter spacing in those blank walls.
Okay. Those are my questions.
And I just wanted to add the comment that on the elevation that it's to remain. You see that pattern of
I see.
being side by side. So that same spacing worked by magic, I would assume, to where it transitions from the blank wall to the windows there.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Lenvik?
My question was the rendered corner of State and Carrillo.
Which sheet?
I'm A200.
Oh.
Yeah, I see all brown there and I don't see it over there.
Yeah, it's I hate to say this in front of Ryan, but it's a graphic error.
Okay. But there is a wood gate, but it's way down, isn't it?
Correct.
It's actually depicted correctly in the elevations to the.
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is the exit door, by the way, out of the upper floors.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Vania? No questions. Commissioner Rice? Commissioner Mahan?
No.
Commissioner Drury? Okay. And I would just have, let's see, I had one question about do you have a detail or section through here?
Yes, that would
through
be
the window?
A303. One more. 304. Here it is.
What is it, A304?
304.
Well, that's the existing.
And then the news here. So you can see the size of the existing openings and the relationship to the corbel. And that's our new opening. And you see where that concrete sill is at.
Mm-hmm. Was it wider? It's up higher, right?
Yeah, it's up higher. The windows are same height as originally proposed, but now they're higher in elevation.
And by the way, I also want to make sure we understand that my intent here is that we're going to paint the underside of that eave the same color as the beams. Now it's white, and I've never liked that, so that it all becomes one overhang.
You'll eat more light that way. You'll eat more light that way.
That's true. I will, but it's just every time I look at that, it bugs me.
You were looking for more light.
I am. I am looking for more light. It's true. You're right.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
I'm ready to
O'Neill?
make a comment if you.
Okay, let's start at that end.
I mean, I like what you're, by moving that lintel up, I think it's better, and when I look at the current proposed elevation, the south elevation, and it shows the corbels better, I think that's an improvement. I don't like the State Street, the new proposed State Street with the big entrance here. Where were the pointer?
There?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really liked about the changing of the Saks Fifth Avenue and putting the windows in was we get a lot of horizontality into the architecture, and that brings the building down and it makes it a little more human in scale. And I think this is a much more human in scale entrance. This bothers me and to disrupt the horizontality of those windows, I think is unfortunate, and nothing is to be gained by it. This is better, and this is more human scale is in our guidelines in El Pueblo Viejo, and I think we should stay with this. Other than that, I think everything else is okay.
Commissioner House?
Well, I, of course, respect Commissioner Mahan's opinion, but I was surprised to hear him say that because I like all the changes. I mean, I had some concerns at first. I don't think you're going to get any more light in because you've just raised the windows up and those deep overhangs are what are going to cut the light out. But that aside, I like the appearance of the changes. But I think that this helps break this up from just being horizontal stripes. And it's that canopy that projects out over the street that gives an element of human scale, pedestrian scale. And it's never bothered me. It's existed for a long time, so it's never really concerned me. But I like the way it kind of breaks up the composition of the State Street elevation from just being a bunch of horizontal bands. So,
All right. Commissioner Arias?
No, I think that the changes have been fine. I think that there is some, forgot. I think that there is some merit to what Mr. Commissioner House said. I'd like to keep the entrance welcoming and human scale, and the one area right there sort of takes that away. But the others are fine as far as I can see.
so you agree with Commissioner Mahan?
I'm not an architect.
Okay. I just thought you said that you agreed with me, but
I
then
do
you're-
agree with you. I think it
But I
makes
like
it more
that as it is,
welcoming.
yeah.
Well, I think this one makes it more welcoming
Okay.
than that one.
So you agree with Commissioner
Yeah,
Mahan?
but I mean, it becomes a design decision that has to be made by the architect.
Commissioner Vena? All right. Nothing. Okay, for my own comments, I can see the strength of the original proposal. I like it a little better. I mean, I may gave a little jab at this one being like Bugs Bunny, being so the train can go through or whatever. But I do like the other one better. But at the same time, I do think there is some deference to the architect needs to. And also just to the fact that it's currently existing, that I could kind of live with it in terms and still be okay with it. The one thing I do or I don't agree with is, and I think this perspective shows it the best, is the spacing of rafters and the sort of the structural logic that they should be expressing. And if your rafter is so big and extends so far, and it is spaced in a certain amount, rhythmically, that means that that's your kind of visual structure of the roof. Now, obviously it's not, but that's at least the logic that's there. And then all of a sudden, for that to double, and for no visual reason, like if there was a big weight here that was coming down that there needed to be a cantilever, you see that either they get bigger size-wise, or they double up, or they get closer in terms of their because they're carrying something more. So I don't know if there's a way of doing like a smaller one in between or something that actually gives, and that's why I was asking about the section, was give some structural logic to why you would have your spacing half of it on this way and half of it the other way, or doubling it on this side. But I think that should be, I would say that it would be better if you made them either the same or you found some other visual key for it. And I think you find that in all the great architects of our city, where of the past, that there was always a beefier or logic that played out visually for most of the things. So that's the one part. It's minor, but that would be the part that I would want to see change.
And just to be clear, on this side, on that parking lot side, it is an extra deep overhang, so it is.
It's deeper than
it
the other
is,
side.
yeah,
Yeah,
on the
so-
other side, so it's exacerbated on that side for sure.
And if there was a way of, and I think there might be, you might be able to take half of the top half of it and still use it, engage into the header in between, or keeping something that makes it look like you are structurally, visually holding it.
Can we see those elevations?
Or as you suggest, just
Or pull
simply
off.
pull them off.
Yeah.
Pull off.
And I
Pull
get
off every other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe I get that you're looking up and you're seeing like a gap tooth because it's a lot of plaster and a little bit of beam, but I think it's still maybe you do something else with the board in between like you had here or something else. I get your trouble, or maybe just going to the brown underneath will help it out and help it just all kind of go away into a brown lid. So you might be okay with it, but I would say if you can keep that rhythm, that just makes so much more visual sense.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mr. House.
If I could expand on that, if I understood what you're saying, possibly a shallower one in between each of these, which if you did that, it looks like the spacing of this, a pair of them is the same as one of those spaces.
Almost there. They're 5 foot 3 inches,
Yeah.
and these are like 10 feet. no, 11.6.
Yeah, okay, so
close
pretty
enough.
close. Such that if you took out alternating ones here and they were the half ones, unless there happens to be an odd number there and it just doesn't work out. But to the extent there could be something consistent across there, it's just kind of a little jarring for it to start and stop and change.
Yeah, admittedly, you know, when we were really looking at this, we were looking more at the elevation. You know, as I mentioned, it felt anemic, and I have to admit, when we look at that, the rendering
Perspective,
probably gives us a better understanding of it. And I also think that probably that painting of the underside
will
help it all just go wood brownish.
Fewer beams may be better.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so you are looking for
revised
your revised final. So you're looking for final approval. So is there a motion that we can make for that?
I'll move for approval for final, as submitted.
As submitted?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there a seconder?
I think we're dancing ahead of a pin over spacing of corbels, but...
More important to some of us than others.
What I would
apparently.
suggest is that we could, we are in plan check. We don't have our plan check corrections back yet, do we?
No.
Perhaps return to consent with refined beams, rafter spacing?
You're not going to be able to eliminate one because you're going to end up odd on the...
Well, I mean, we already have to move the corbels, so we'd have to just come up with that.
Respace them.
We'd have to respace them is what we'll have to do.
They're false, right?
They are false. They're big, heavy cast concrete, but
150 pounds each.
Piece of cake.
Okay, so do we have another motion?
I will make that motion.
Okay, so to
continue 2 weeks to the consent calendar.
With studying the corbel issue. Okay. Is there a seconder?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
And so just to be clear, it's the corbel, that's really what we'll be looking at on consent, otherwise
everything else.
I think the entrance is your call.
Okay.
Yep. All right, and then was there any abstain? No, so unanimous? Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
All right, and we are only 8 minutes behind.
Where's our last applicant?
Right.
Commissioner,
I think they're out in the hall.
yeah, if they're out in the hall, then they can.
There was somebody out
Do
there.
we want to take a 5-minute break?
No. Let's go.
Oh, all right. There we go. I just wanted to get the
This is gonna,
keep
this
everyone
one's gonna
going.
go fast.
All right.
Head of a pin.
Where are those darn applicants?
Darned applicants.
Darned applicants.
Yeah.
Turn it back on.
Hey.
Yeah, you're back on the last page.
Boy, there's a lot of them.
Christ. This is the entire Coastal Collective.
Yeah.
All right. So this is item number 5, 1019 Chapala Street, and a proposal for facade improvements to an existing commercial building located in El Pueblo Viejo Landmark District. Project includes improvements to windows and doors, replacement of brick with sandstone wainscot, storefront elements, windows, elimination of the stucco on Chapala Street, and changes to the existing awnings. Also proposed are paint changes to the building, window, door, and trim, addition of scones, which sound delicious, to the Chapala and rear elevations, and a new fence and gate. All right, action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. So welcome. Please state your names into the microphone for the record.
In the grocery store.
Hold it close.
This is the first building.
Dan Weber, architect.
This used to be American Sporting Goods.
Ken Dixon from Woodward.
American.
All right, welcome. All right, so if you can walk us through your project.
Sure. Julian, do you want to introduce the project at all?
Yeah, so what this is we're at 1019 Chapala Street. This is a...
you need to talk into the microphone. About 6 inches.
I
Sorry.
apologize, Mr. Chair, but can the applicant team please go through your names again?
Just
For the record.
Yeah.
Julian Michalowski.
Dan Weber. Ken Dixon.
So
You need to be about 6 inches away from the mic.
this is 1019 Chapala Street. It is a retail cannabis dispensary approved by the city. So there are going to be some intricacies on this that the city is mandating, so for like cameras and stuff like that on the exterior of the building. But yeah, I'll let Dan kind of go through the visuals of it, and if there's any questions, I can answer them.
Okay.
Great. So 1019 Chapala, this is Chapala Street. We've got a storefront that's about 50 feet wide, long, narrow building. To the north is Invoca, another commercial office building. To the south is Ralph's parking lot. This is all big open surface parking field. Behind, we have a tiny parking lot with a fence, and we're going to be doing some improvements around the back as well. This is accessed through an easement on the neighboring property. So the main thing we want to focus on is the improvements to the facade on Chapala Street.
Okay.
That looks better.
This is what's here today. It's a typical Spanish-style storefront. It's had several remodels probably over the years. We're going to be taking out everything inside of these openings and starting fresh in there. So we're going to be removing the awnings. You can see there's a little header behind that awning, which we're going to be removing. We're going to be removing all of this existing storefront and these little stone planters and proposing a new storefront in the character of what we see up and down State Street, and just do a new, nice, fresh, clean Spanish-style storefront, adding some new signage and some new lighting. You can see in the back. Let me get myself oriented.
Well, here, why don't we get you the pointer here?
Yeah.
There we go. So there's a stairway that goes down into the adjacent Ralph's parking lot, and there's an easement. Ralph's has a pedestrian easement, so they need to be able to use the stair and come up and cross through the back of our property. The long side of the building facing Ralph's parking lot has a few scattered windows on it. And yeah, that's about all we need to be pointing out. We're going to be replacing the awnings. We're going to paint the building with a fresh coat of white paint.
All right.
East elevation, pointing out the east elevation.
Yeah. Or south, depending
South
on how you look
elevation.
at it. Yeah. What we
Closest to east,
Yeah,
yes.
that's wrong.
But we call it south.
This is east.
Yeah,
This is south.
it probably is closer to
Faces
east
the ocean.
technically. I always tend to call that south.
Yeah.
But
To the
It is
beach.
the south.
so we won't spend too much time looking at the interior. There's a bunch of interior walls we're going to be reconfiguring for the proposed.
We don't need to look at that at all.
Work. Elevations of the existing building, and let's look at the elevations of what we're proposing. So on the Chapala Street side, we've proposed new wood storefront. This will probably be something like vertical grain fir with a clear finish coat. Double doors with nice Spanish-style hardware and big storefront glass looking into the space. We proposed a little clear story lights above the mullion here, and these two storefronts will essentially match. We're looking at a configuration now that might have two separate entrances, and if we come back to you, we'll have an entrance matching that one in the adjacent storefront. But it's one business. Blade signage, location for the main sign, and again, if we do these two separate entrances, we'll probably have two signs, and some new sconces outside. This is the adjacent office building to the north or the west. Existing tile roof is going to remain, and I already mentioned we're going to be painting the building white.
The same way. That's existing.
The same white as the building is now, you mean?
Correct.
Okay. So we'll be back here in 2 weeks and asking you for final approval, and we'll bring our color chips at that time. So the long side, this is the Chapala Street side. This is the long side. All of this faces Ralph's parking lot. The storefront of Ralph's is even further back here. We're not proposing any new doors and windows here. All we're going to be doing is painting and replacing the awnings. And we're proposing black awnings along here. We want the interior concept of this project is a modern concept, and we want the exterior to be compatible with all the Spanish style stuff in Santa Barbara that we love, but also reflect kind of a clean, sharp look that that the brand reflects inside. We do have a security requirement for some new sconces along this side of the building, which are not yet indicated on this this elevation. These are light posts that are in the Ralph's parking lot. So we'll show you where we're going to put sconces, but we'll probably have a few surface-mounted sconces for security along that side. On the back of the building, we have a new ramp to get down into this accessible entrance, because this entrance is actually below parking lot level by a little bit, by about 6 inches. We've got some new sconces, replacing the awnings over these existing windows. And these downspouts will remain. Those are existing that are going to remain. I think we've covered it there. Okay. Yeah, in the back parking lot, this is the stairway that goes down to the Ralph's parking lot. Ralph's has a pedestrian easement, so they can wind along the perimeter of our property. And for security purposes, we're proposing a new 6-foot-high CMU wall with a stucco coat over it to secure the back parking lot. And we'll be providing a new trash enclosure with wood gates, something similar to this, although probably not such a bright stain. It'll be maybe more of a chocolate brown stain. And then a new double leaf entry gate that's motorized on the entry to that back parking lot. That's what the elevation of that wall might look like. This is what the storefront on Chapala, how we envision it. And under the storefront, if you notice on the elevation, we've got a 18-inch high sandstone base.
What's this here?
The light. That's a security camera, yeah. So because of the use, we've got requirements to put security cameras outside of the building, both in the front and the back. So we'll show you exactly where those go on the elevations when we come back in a couple weeks. But we'd love to get your feedback on it right now. And we've got a plan that indicates with this half circle symbol generally where we need to have security cameras. So I don't know if there's a more charming looking camera product out there. I don't think we're going to have a lot of options to come up with something that looks amazing, but we're going to get something that's as small and inconspicuous as possible. Okay. That's all I've got for you. We'd love to get your feedback, anything that you'd like us to watch out for, because we really want to try to be well prepared to get a final approval in a couple weeks when we come back. Anything else you guys want to add?
All right. Yeah. No? Okay. So we'll now open public comment. Seeing none, I will close public comment and back to the commission for questions.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. House.
If we go to the...
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I know. Well, the elevations, which sheet was that? Okay, one more here. Okay. I was wondering, why are these awnings so low compared to those? Are you planning on reusing the existing frames in place and just
We're going to
recovering
reuse the frames and just replace the fabric.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea why they were installed so low? I think it's consistent.
I think they're at normal window height. There is a level change in the building. About halfway through the building, it steps up, so the back is
Where was that?
Right here's where the
Here's some, yeah. So they do cover the windows that much.
They're up.
They're small windows.
Yeah, they're just real small heads.
That's not it.
Oh, it is?
These.
So actually, that is a good point. The
Is this the
windows
same?
on that
Is this
elevation
it?
are fairly short.
Are very short. Okay. All right. And then my other question, you mentioned that there were going to be some new lanterns on this wall, and I'm wondering what the purpose of that would be. Is that for security in the vicinity of the cameras? And if that's the case, is there not enough light provided by these lanterns? And Would they be the same kind of lanterns that you're showing on this sheet here if they're for security lighting?
Yeah, the requirement for those lights is part of the application process, which
so
the team spent a long time working on.
We're since it is that cannabis use, the lighting, the security. There's some exterior sound boxes that the security inside could actually speak out of, and they were specified through MAP4 and Paul Casey and those guys when we did the application that they had to be in specific areas for safety and security purposes. So there's going to be a way that the security can actually speak out to somebody if there was somebody outside, standing around, or let's say somebody tried to open up their cannabis packet outside the door, so that they could speak to them, and it's an alarm system as well as the cameras and the lights. The lighting at Ralph's wasn't taken into account by the city. They wanted us to have, because in the future or whatever, they don't know. They wanted us to control the lighting on the building. So
speaking of lighting, can you flip to real fast and just go over that real, because you're jumping in with the lighting, but I'm just still trying to follow where all the lights are and how.
So they're not in this plan. This is part of our exterior security plan. So when you see these
those half circles.
Those are indicating security cameras.
Right.
Okay, but so where can we see where all the lighting is?
It's not on there
Unfortunately,
yet.
you can't see it on this.
Okay.
Yeah, it was when we were reviewing the security requirements after we submitted this paperwork, we realized that we had to put 3 lights on the.
Okay, so then those 3 lights are.
They're going to be distributed along this elevation.
Gotcha. Okay, so we don't see them at all yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see the front and the back, but not
Along the side, you see these posts that we've sketched in here. These are 3 lanterns that are on Ralph's property, and I believe those lanterns are on 24/7 or after dark, all night.
Mm-hmm.
So our sconces that we're going to propose on this wall will be a little bit redundant. I think if you guys gave us some input on whether you'd like us to make an effort to not propose those sconces and simply rely on Ralph's for our security purposes, there might be an opportunity to do that. We've got some other entities within the city that we need to negotiate that with. On the front facade, we've proposed 2 sconces here, and we don't have an electrical plan here, but we'll probably have some downlights under the soffit as well, just some small recessed downlights.
And next week when we come back, we will have in 2 weeks, we'll have all the lighting and security cameras in there so you can visualize it. It was more of I guess if there's a specific type of light that you'd like to see, I don't know. I mean, we could always go back to the city, but
Well, I'll make some comments to that extent when we get to
That's-
comments.
And so, speaking of questions, do you have any more questions?
No.
Commissioner House? All right, Commissioner Lenvik, any questions?
Your intention is to replace the storefronts on Chapala Street
Correct.
with wood.
Correct.
Any other questions? Nope.
Yes.
Commissioner Venya?
Question.
Commissioner Arias?
Do you feel, given the back of the building as it is and the lights from Vaughn's, do you think that's security enough to prevent tagging and everything else that may well occur?
we got tagged about 2 weeks ago
Congratulations.
on the front of our building. We don't necessarily want to be lit up like a Christmas tree, but it's the police department, to be frank. So
Did you use Goof Off?
no, we had to repaint it.
You repainted
Yeah,
it,
we
yeah.
had
I use Goof Off a lot.
Yeah.
But I
Next
just,
time I'll use that.
I just see that, no, that's a comment.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll make it.
Any other questions, Commissioner Arias? All right, Commissioner Mann?
Yeah, if you say that you wanted these awnings to be black,
We'd like to use black awnings, yes.
why didn't you color them that color there?
Because the computer did that, and the
This-
marking
some-
pen did
somebody,
that.
somebody,
That's
did
correct.
you color this?
I did, yeah.
You have good taste.
You'd like to
That's a
see them a
comment.
little,
That's a comment.
maybe 80% black
That's
rather than 100%
Batman black.
I
Really,
think
really
that
dark.
I think if you'd have colored these in black, it wouldn't have been as, but that's a comment. I'll get to that in a minute.
Other questions, Commissioner Mann? All right, Commissioner Drury?
Yes, I hope that I'm correct in saying that this is actually the east elevation, your front?
Yes, it is east.
And we'll go around, the next time we come around, we'll have the appropriate compass points. It's always a problem in Santa Barbara.
No, wait, that's
No, that's
what faces
that
the
can't
ocean
be north.
is south.
That
I see,
elevation is
sorry.
closest to north. If you
Yeah.
actually go to Google and look
Yeah.
at it, yeah, that's,
There.
if you want
That's
to
it.
call
Okay.
it east, we can.
Oh, my goodness.
We do.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? I had a couple questions. Okay, let's see. Let's look at the wall and the trash enclosure. And maybe we have to go to plan. So just looking at these collection, and
Oh, the site plan, first
go to the
page.
very first page. Okay, so just, do you mind hitting the pointer real fast? Okay, so just to kind of make sure we're understanding it. So these are the wood gates that we saw. This is a wood gate. This is plaster wall.
Right.
And then this is
That's just the
property
property
line.
line. Yep.
Okay. And this is wood, this is plaster, trash enclosure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to kind of make sure I understood that.
Do you want me to go in? So we have an easement from the house to their property here. So, and for the city, this needed to be a secure area for when deliveries come in, that everything can lock. So that's what
Okay,
we're
so this
looking
is
at.
so that you can come in, lock, have a safe delivery, and then go out.
Correct.
Okay, and so the shape of this wall is responding to this path.
Correct.
And the need to have some clearance in here.
Yeah, doing the best we can with
Okay,
that.
that makes sense. Okay, and that was the only question I had. So let's go to comments now. Commissioner Lenvik?
Come back to me.
Okay. Commissioner Reyes?
My comment is that I think the more lights, the better off you are. And other than that, I don't see anything. I think you've done a lot about security, and not used to these things. A lot about security, and as I said, I think the lights, it's worth the investment to have good lighting.
That's what it is.
Okay, Commissioner House?
Well, lighting is important. The quality of the lighting is even more important. And if you want to get a final, I have a concern that the city may be, well, I don't know this. Are they requiring certain foot candle levels, just as there's state laws about foot candle levels at ATMs? So I'm wondering if they're being very specific about the amount of light that you need to have.
I don't believe, sorry, he's our compliance guy. I don't believe that there is, and we can double check on what was 100% stated in the application.
Okay, but if there are, especially if there are, I would strongly advise you to have an electrical engineer do a foot candle plot so we know what kind of brightness we're talking about, because especially when it's like somebody's phone or something is trying to, I don't know what it is.
Electrocuted is from making noise.
Anyway. So necessary if you are having to have a lot of lights. I mean, I certainly have a concern about you adding lanterns there because I don't see the point of them. I mean, there's already light from Ralph's pole lights. And furthermore, when you have the kind of lantern you're proposing, if you are trying to get a certain level of illumination, those can get very glary and bright, and then you start running afoul of the city's lighting ordinance and lighting design guidelines and dark sky ordinances and various different things. So I want to make sure that you address that and we don't get this approved and then find out, oh, the Christmas tree reference somebody made. I would also recommend, there's no specifics about the illumination source in there, and of course you can't have incandescent any longer. and you are specifying it would be an opal glass, usually what's more traditionally appropriate is a clear seated glass. And there are LED lamps that go into a screw-in socket now that look like incandescent clear envelope lamps. And because what's nice about those kind of fixtures is the interesting pattern of shadows they cast on a stucco wall, which you don't get that when you have the opal glass. You don't get that when you have a compact fluorescent lamp. So I would like you to look into that. But, you know, it's the light intensity that's important. You try and light up an area too much to satisfy a requirement, it's very glary. I can't support black awnings. We have on occasion, but we have a color guide. I don't know if you've seen that, but if you talk to, oh, you have it here, okay. So we recently upgraded this, and it has a section at the back on awning colors. So you see there's a number of darker colors, but none of them are black. So I would suggest you...
Right here.
Find something dark.
Those are paint colors.
Yeah.
These are the awning colors, these last two pages.
Yeah.
So, but there are some very dark.
Yeah, so that gives the crisp contrast I think you're after without it being stark black. And I would also request you investigate a little bit more whether or not these awnings appear so low because those windows are only 12 inches high or something like that. I mean, if those awnings could be raised up higher, I think that would look far better, but it's hard for me to know what the situation with the window behind that is.
Are these your only awning colors?
Yes.
You can bring something in and propose it.
Those are the pre-approved. If you want a quick,
those last two pages.
Then
Fair Grumbine and Commissioner Mahan, there is one color at the very beginning of the book. I just wanted to point that out. And
Is this okay?
What is that?
No, that's for paint. That's for.
it is for paint colors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
the
for- this is
closest
for
we have
wrought
to
iron.
black for wrought iron.
That's for wrought
so.
iron.
And you wouldn't support a color like that for an awning versus a wrought iron?
I wouldn't.
No.
you can propose it and see how the chips fall. But
Can I talk, Mr. Chair?
yes, yeah,
I'm done.
yeah, Commissioner Mahan.
I agree with everything that's been said, but I just want to point out why we don't like black. You see, that windows almost always are black, and when you put a black awning there, you don't get anything new. There's nothing new except for maybe the shape. So a nice dark brown or some other color there's lots of opportunities to pick something there. The question that I had is, are you changing these is this the stone staying? Or no. You're taking that out and you're just going to make it
We're just going to extend the
sandstone.
sidewalk into those.
Take the sidewalk right in, that's good. One other comment I have to make maybe it's for the commission more than for the owner. We have very, very severe security problems in the courthouse. And so we were required to put these whatever you call it, these cameras all over the courthouse, and everybody just gulped. But they went ahead and they put them up anyway, and you just don't notice them.
Yeah, they're pretty
innocuous. It's just something that happens, and it just isn't a big deal. So I wouldn't worry about those. They're just not important. Other than that, I think it's okay.
Okay, Commissioner Drury.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the CSP. So the A201 is what's existing, and A202 is this is what's proposed.
Yes.
So one entrance instead of two?
Maybe two.
No, it's going to be two.
It is going to be
entrances.
two?
It's going to be this again right there. So there is
Okay,
going to be two
okay.
entrances.
And then this border is going to be that slab sandstone?
Yep.
Okay, and the only thing I would say as a comment is that the ratio, I mean, I agree with the previous comments about awnings and lighting, but the ratio of height, this looks top heavy. I'm not sure if it's just the drawing. This looks like it's too weighty up top, and this looks like it's too small, too low.
Too narrow.
Too narrow.
Too low.
Yeah, it could be
the building to the right where the bulkhead's taller.
Yeah. Another 6 inches maybe if that's a.
You're suggesting raising the height of the
Yeah,
wall?
just so that the ratio between that crown, you can see it very clearly there. It looks really overbearing visually. And it may not be that way in real life, but on the,
Yeah, I think we could look at that.
let's look at it anyway.
The lower,
You're talking.
yeah, the
Just
lower,
to be clear,
what they
we're
call it,
talking
a
about-
wainscot or whatever it is.
Bulkhead, I think.
Yeah, the bulkhead. The lower bulkhead is too mid-century modern, and it needs to come up. The Santa Barbara has a certain proportion for the bulkhead, and
It
it's
looks like it's maybe 14 inches.
yeah, and
here
it should be
18
like
inches
about
might
20 inch. Should be about 20 inches.
I also think probably the lights along the top can be a narrower proportion, like squeeze one more light in there to get it a little bit taller and thinner.
About catty corner from that is a restaurant where the Sportsman's Lounge is or was, and we had that same difficulty because they actually were different elevations, kind of stepping down from the alley. So, but they did what they needed to do, and it's more attractive.
We were inspired by, there's a store on State Street. It was a jewelry store. Now it's vacant. It's like Goldberg's Jewelry or something.
Gilio's?
Oh, the one at the entrance to El Paseo, that one?
No, it's a block further north. But it's got a very similar
You might need to talk. And
sorry, yeah, it's got a very similar facade design to those openings. It looks great. I think it's one of the more charming ones.
Mr. Chair, I think when they come back, they should do a section through of the window and the awning, so we can see where that awning is located and the slope of it.
The window and the awning here?
Yeah. I mean, we required that at the 800 Santa Barbara Street drawings, and I think it clarified how the awnings would be installed. And
even though these are existing awnings.
Yeah, they're existing awnings. We're just replacing the fabric. The metal and everything is fine. How it is, or when I say it's fine, it's in good condition. So we were just proposing changing the fabric because the fabric's a little bit sun.
Were you thinking of it just in terms of where you actually set it, like height-wise?
Yeah, well, with
or the actual design of it.
I think Mr. Lenvik brought up when we were reviewing 800 State Street that there is a right way to hang an awning and a wrong way, and it's these seem to look okay to me, and I'm sensing that maybe your elevation drawing is off.
I think you're probably correct.
Yeah.
So, well, no, I think these ones are different.
This is about a foot. This is about a foot above the and this is just a little bit lower than the head, and that that looks okay. But I don't think your elevation drawings are quite accurate.
It's no big deal to move the frame up
Mr.
and
Chair.
patch a little stucco.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you guys talk down there, but we have some comments as well.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Well, as soon as they're done with their comments, we can work back to you. You had your chance. All right, Commissioner Van done. Okay, Commissioner Lenvik, back to you.
I am not sure that I understand the transition of your street elevation. On A201, I see kind of a picture frame around the side and across the head, but I don't see that picture framing detail on A202. Are you plastering the front?
Yeah.
You're redoing the front in its entirety?
That bevel.
Okay, so you're losing that. And you don't see any need then for an awning either on the front? Good, all right, that's great. Have you given any consideration to the possibility of doing cut-up windows as opposed to a single large pane?
I think you were just mentioning that, weren't you?
I'm sorry, to doing what type of
Doing
visions,
doing cut-ups,
divided lights?
Yeah, divided light.
Yeah, we did think about that. This is a commercial storefront, and it's got really good visibility on a fairly busy street. So we want to have the most visibility as possible into the space.
No problem. Yep. Good. That's only.
Okay,
That's it.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
I was letting him comment for me.
Yeah.
I mean, your guys chit-chatting down there was interesting, but
it was under comments. Okay.
Take that under advisement.
So for my comments, so I would say that the biggest issue area I have is with this right here, and it's not a big deal because I think it's pretty easily solved. So just the wood in which even your example here, having horizontal boards it's a very modern aesthetic. And so this is, just look at a more traditional design for gates here, for just even how that wood is laid out and constructed, and then hinges and those type of things. The wall is simple and plain, but it's also the back, and that makes sense as the plaster wall goes. But so it's really more the wood designs that is an issue. And then for the wrought iron, obviously this is. Well, actually, not necessarily. Obviously, are there going to be any cross pieces, or is that just
That's
drafting?
all existing. It's an existing.
Oh, that's existing as is. Okay.
There is a horizontal at the top.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. So with that, that's the main thing I think needs needs help. And then aside, I agree with all the other comments, except for the one I think having so much picture window, having all storefront, I think you could find it, but in general, still the division is better. But you do have the transom already going, so that could be kind of enough, in my mind, to kind of get you by. So, you're looking to come back. So I think that and obviously you're looking to come back fast and get it done. How does everyone feel in terms of outstanding issues, and whether they can?
I think the lighting is the big issue. I mean, I
think we
have
need to see
serious
it again.
questions
Yeah.
about what you're going to have to do, and I would want you to have addressed those before you come back instead of continuing you another 2 weeks.
Well, we could continue 2 weeks if they come back with the lighting, right? The lighting design?
Well, we're going to continue it 2 weeks anyway for final, but I mean, if they don't have appropriate answers to the lighting, it's not worked out yet or something, then
It'll
that
be
would
worked
be a
out.
delay.
We'll have specifics
Yeah.
for you.
So-
We'll look at that. Yeah, for
So we're basically looking to continue for 2 weeks, and then when they come back and we're satisfied, project design approval and final?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have one question regarding your security. You're enclosing that rear parking whatever area with a wall. Isn't that counterproductive? Wouldn't more security be available to you by looking through a fence?
With cannabis, you're not allowed to see product. Customers are not allowed to see product. That's where all of the deliveries are going to come in. So it has to be something that you cannot see through in the back. So
Like a black plastic bag isn't adequate?
well, they actually, you guys would have hated what they suggested, which is slatted fencing, chain link slatted fencing. So I think we did a step. We tried to go a step further than that. But what it is, you're going to come back there. You're going to have 2 security guards in the back anytime there's deliveries.
I don't care.
Yeah.
That was a comment.
Okay.
Or questions.
All right, so is that the comfort level? We're not comfortable enough for design approval yet? Okay.
Did I make a motion, Mr. Chair?
All right,
For
Commissioner.
a 2 week?
Before you do, would I be able to ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
We would love to get this into the building department. Does the board feel like we are at the point right now where we could get our building department application going while we're waiting on working these last
Staff
two?
can answer that
Chair,
question.
we don't allow applications to proceed into the building department until they have both project design approval and final approval. So until you get your final approval from this board, that wouldn't be a possibility.
So I'm going to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Yep,
For a
Commissioner.
2 week continuance.
Okay.
And with the comments, as noted.
Okay, and we can go through those afterwards. Okay, under discussion. Okay, so we'll just outline those comments. So we said that the lighting is, we kind of had various ideas, but the main thing is we need to see it. It needs to be studied. We're concerned about foot candles and the lighting amount and also what it will look like. So the lighting study is important. The awnings, to either pick a color from our awning book or to come up with your own, but that black awnings are not acceptable. The storefront was the design for the storefront was generally acceptable, but with a study of lifting the bulkhead. let's
By
see.
about 6 inches or something.
Yeah. About 6 inches. Were other commissioners feeling the same about my comments about the?
Yes.
Yeah. So the gates and the plaster wall is good as it is. The gates need to be done in a more traditional manner, vertical planks in a more traditional manner. As well, you're going to want to have a detail of how your plaster is. I know you're going to be matching existing, but we need to see that kind of bull nose and just a little detail of that plaster. The windows, we wanted at least a study, a look at the windows, even though they're existing windows with existing awnings, a study of what that'll look like and where the right height is for them to kind of try to lift up on the what side was that?
In the east elevation, they should show the
East.
second door.
Oh yeah, and update the east elevation. And then, am I missing anything? Oh, color. Yeah, color sample. We also avail yourself of the color sample book and try to match existing might be okay, or it might be not if the existing isn't the greatest. So.
Color board.
Yeah, color board is going to be important, and if you can find one that matches the closest to.
Where do we access this?
Talk to Nicole. She can give you the information.
The urban historian.
Chair Groma, and to the applicant, it is available online. You can always request the book at the Planning and Zoning counter, but it is available on our website. Just look for SB Color Guide.
Is there any other comments I was missing?
Yeah, I'm just not missing, but I'll just say the more detail you give us, the quicker it'll go when you come back.
Okay, and so we have a motion and a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's in the forest still.
most
It's still in the forest.
The last 6 months.
There we go.
Nice light agenda. That's right. That's right. Oh, sorry. Yes, and we are adjourned.